Call the meeting to order. May I have a motion to return to the regular meeting from executive session? Who's the motion? Kelly? Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried. Please join me in the pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, please call the roll.
Peter Bodnar. Kelly Cahill-Chensky. Linda Gaines. Here. Dave Goddard.
Here.
Larry Janot.
Here.
Edward McCormick. Mary Ann Meaden.
Here.
Marion Quinn. Here. Mark Hunter.
Here. Okay, the reading of the district mission. Our mission is to empower all students to be self-directed, lifelong learners who willingly contribute to their community and lead passionate, purposeful lives. Okay, before we move on, I just want to remind our guests in the audience that we're all required to wear masks, and we will do so throughout the meeting. Thank you. Approval of the agenda. May I have a motion? Okay, any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Correspondence. Anyone have any correspondence they wish to share? Seeing none, we'll move on. All right, Board President's remarks. First of all, I'm asked by Mr. Bodman to let everyone know he sends his regrets about not being able to be here tonight. His son's is at a concert tonight at the high school, and it's his last opportunity to see him, so he's out here tonight and I'm filling in for him. The next item on Board President remarks, I wanted to ask for a moment of silence for three former district employees: Mary Ann Bold, who passed on 11/23/21, who worked 21 years as a bus monitor; Diane Duplessis, who passed on 11/8/21. She worked at LMS 29 years as a teaching assistant; and Gladys White, who passed on October 10/21, who worked at AMS for 20 years as a secretary. And I now ask if you would observe a moment of silence for those three individuals. Thank you. Superintendent's remarks.
Good evening. Joe Post, our Assistant Superintendent for Pupil Personnel Services. We're going to take this slot to revisit the conversation that we had last month about options for reducing the quarantine time. And we said we would come back to you and see if you want us to review how we proceed after the first of the year. So I wanted to give you some of the information that we have. So one of the options, test to stay, and this was explained last time, but I'm just going to review. One of the options, test to stay, is that a student would test daily for 7 consecutive days from exposure. And then they would, as long as they test negative, be allowed to stay in school. That is not recommended by the New York Department of Health or the CDC or our medical advisor, despite the fact that it is allowable, it's not recommended. The other option is test out of quarantine, And what that is students would be able to take a test on day 5 and then return after day 7 of the quarantine. So it shortens the quarantine up by 3 days. And that is something that the Department of Health does not recommend, but the CDC has changed its stance on that and has now said that that is something that they can support. Our medical advisor is still not recommending that. So those are the 2 options. The experience from local districts, the one most similar to ours, Wappingers, have said that their Test to Stay program, that they believe that they have been able to keep 150 students out of quarantine that otherwise would have had to go into quarantine. So they feel that the program has been working.
Which one did they have? Both or?
No, they have the Test to Stay.
First one.
Okay, so if we were to do this, I would recommend, we're recommending as a cabinet, that we would give some time for things to die down after the holidays and implement either one of these beginning on January 17th, which is the date of our second week after we return from the holidays. And so if you would like us to proceed in either one of those directions, we will do so. We just wanted to get your opinion if you feel that that's something you want to see. Now, the Test to Stay, people would have to come to the district office in the morning. They come to a centralized place in the morning, and we would set that up. If it is a test out of quarantine early, there are a lot of testing places that they could go to on their own, and they would go there on day 5 to get the test and provide a negative test result. We would administer that unless their day 5 happens to be on a day that we're offering testing or something like that. It's not inconceivable that they could get it here, and if they can, we would provide it, but in most cases, they would probably do it on their own and then provide the negative test. So we checked with some of the local people that we work with on our employee testing program and for the students who chose to get tested, and we believe that we would be able to come up with a plan where we could do either one of these. That's what you would like to see us do.
What would the county rate have to do with this plan? At what point would we want to do this?
Well, one of our people in cabinet checked this morning, and we thought the rate was like 5.4%, I think. It really depends what your comfort level is, because there is no guidance that's given from the county health department on anything as far as, any definitive criteria that guides us in a specific way. It's really our own individual discretion as to what we would like to see.
I was just going to ask about the logistical. So you were saying they have to go to central office? Do their parents have to drive them?
Yeah, they would have to get here, yes.
So is that how Wappingers does it?
Yes,
So the parent drives them to central office, they get a test, and then the parent drives them to school?
yes,
It's like immediate?
yes.
It is for 5 consecutive days.
7.
But it skips weekends, right? It skips weekends. Is that right? Do I recall that correctly? They're allowed to skip the weekend? Yeah.
Yes. Well, it'd probably take us about a week to set it up, but we were thinking that it's probably advisable if we try to let some of the holiday stuff die down a little bit before we implement it. But we would get started on it right away, and if you wanted to see us do it sooner than that, I mean, it's our recommendation that we hold off a little bit, but I think, Paul, would you say we need about a week, probably, lead time?
Yeah, a week or less.
Yeah, I wasn't asking, what you said that earlier, but just didn't know if we waited to January, we're talking 30 days.
Oh, no, that would be like the target date to start.
Any other questions?
And they're asking us to talk really close in for the people at home. People in the cheap seats.
Well, we're going to discuss we should have a plan, and I'm all for test to stay. So,
I mean, you know, I went to PTSA, we had some questions, I was gonna mention that in my remarks at the end. There seemed to be some favorable vibes coming from that group, and some good questions. And, I also would be supportive of that to say. I do like the idea of a week buffer after the holidays, just to let things settle down, but I think it's an excellent way to keep our kids in school and give parents a choice.
Anyone that doesn't agree with the, doing it after 1 week, after the week?
Well, I had suggested 2, but if you want it,
Two, two, 1 or 2. 2.
Can I just clarification, are we doing both? Are we doing test to stay in that quarantine program?
well, I mean, the more conservative one is to test out of quarantine early. So if we're allowing test to stay, if families want to choose the other option, we should probably allow that too.
Anyone disagree with the 2-week period after the vacation?
I don't have a problem with test to stay. I do have just want to make sure that the details of if you miss a day and all of those things and nuances that could happen trying to do something 7 consecutive days. That sounds easy sitting here, but I don't know if that's easy to happen if that happens. Just so we think through that we have a good appreciation of what those nuances would be in terms of maintaining and sustaining a 7-day test stay.
Yeah, I understand that we would have to work through some of those things and make sure that they're clearly communicated. But that is, you know, the Wappingers experience. I mean, the people that are motivated to want to do this are obviously finding the ways to get in and things like that. So,
So you would notify them via letter to maybe the community?
well, we would send a community communication out, yes, for sure.
That would have spell out all the rules.
Yes.
What would happen if a student skipped a day? Then do they start the 7 days from the next day, or do they just continue?
You know, I don't know how they're handling that specifically.
I don't know, but we can find out.
We'll know by then.
We'll know before the letter goes.
Yes.
so you'll come up with a plan, and then on the 17th, we'll be good to go? Is that
Yes,
what you
yeah, I mean,
said?
we have the general framework for plan, we just have to get a few of the details worked out and get the testing company on board, and, but we looked into this, and we, feel that the people that we're working with will have the capacity, and we feel very confident that the 17th is reasonable.
And so people would go into that big assembly room in central office?
Probably, yes, I think that's probably where we would do it, right, Paul, right front there.
We're doing it now for staff.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Thanks for getting the information.
Oh, it's fine, yep,
Yeah.
no, we understand the, concern that people have and the frustration that they have with the quarantines. And, I think we did the right thing, by holding off just a little bit, even if maybe people wanted us to rush into doing it immediately. It was uncomfortable for me to put my name on a recommendation that went against the medical advisor's recommendation, but I think that we've seen that Wappingers has been successful. We know at least in one of the cases, the CDC relaxed its expectations. So I would have felt very comfortable saying that, you know, if you want to go in that direction, certainly I would have supported that. But it's been a challenge with the quarantines, and so this may help.
Anyone else? Great, thank you. All right, moving on. The next item is public comment. This is the first of 2 opportunities for people to address the board. When your name is called from the speakers list for agenda items, you may speak up for up to 3 minutes on agenda items only. Your remarks must be addressed to the board. All speakers must conduct themselves in a civil manner. Although we do not engage in dialogue, we are listening. Comments about individual district personnel or students is not permitted. If you leave your contact information with Mrs. Flynn, our district clerk, the superintendent or one of his staff will contact you as soon as possible. Mrs. Flynn.
Jim Rhoda,
I yield my time.
I'm sorry.
I yield my time. Thank you.
Ms. Liz Ditch,
Good evening, Liz Zich, 53 Cunningham Drive, LaGrangeville. Thank you for continuing with public comments. It's greatly appreciated. I am once again asking the Board of Education district leaders to set up some type of town hall style meeting to address some of the community and parent questions and concerns that have not yet been addressed. The agenda item I'm speaking on is superintendent remarks as they relate to quarantine, test to stay and test out of quarantine. I applaud you for bringing this up this evening. Saying that test to stay and test out of quarantine are not recommended is kind of a moot point. It appears that everyone is most interested in limiting their liability. School wants to limit their liability, people want to limit their personal liabilities, and the desire to limit personal liability has seemed to take precedence over the students and over education. That's not okay. The primary function of school is to educate, and you simply cannot educate students that are sitting home in quarantine for 10 days because they're deemed a close contact, which is arbitrary to begin with. A child who's 2 feet 11 inches is going to be quarantined. A child 1 more inch is okay. So we're basing a lot of these things on very arbitrary rules and regulations that were put into place to begin with. And I'm concerned that none of us are questioning any of these rules. As far as quarantining, I still think that it's unforgivable that this district doesn't have an expectation for teachers to utilize the live streaming equipment that we spent millions of dollars on last year when we had to upgrade the infrastructure, increase broadband, millions of dollars, lots of time. Our kids sat home for you guys to get that straightened out. Yet in this instance, where it can help to educate students, which is why we're all here, we're refusing to use it. I don't understand why there can't be an expectation on teachers to turn on a camera. And I just want to clarify, I'm not talking about teaching the students at home and having a back and forth dialogue. I am simply talking about turning on a camera so the kids at home could have a fighting chance of hearing a fraction of what's going on in the classrooms when they're sitting home for 10 days. And thank God we're considering letting them test out on day 7. Thank you for your time.
Okay, we'll check with our people online as to who wants first one. Curtis Dozier, would you like to speak to an item on the agenda?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, give me a second so I can make you visible here as well. Yes, Curtis Dozier. You can go ahead. It looks like you can pull the Zoom up there. So we hear you, but they're not seeing you.
Okay, I don't see a way I can turn on my video in the screen you have me, so I apologize for that.
I'm gonna
Oh, okay, here we go.
Yes, there we go. But they didn't pull you up on the main screen, but the people in the Zoom will see you.
How about that? Hello, everyone. My name is Curtis Dozier. My child is a student at Arthur S. May, and I'm a member of On Par Partners Against Racism. Since the district communication plan is on the agenda tonight, I'd like to speak about the stories I'm hearing from students and parents coming out of LaGrange Middle School in the absence of meaningful district communication on that topic. I hear about constant fights and bullying. I hear about sexually explicit images of students circulating. I hear about racist hate speech and violence in the halls. I hear about 5th graders that are afraid to start middle school because they're hearing about all of this too from their peers. And what I don't hear is any acknowledgement from the board or leadership in the district that there's a problem, or any concrete statement of what school leadership is doing about it. Now, I think everyone knows that middle school is probably the most challenging age, but we also know that leadership plays a very important role in establishing and maintaining the culture of our institutions. What kinds of behaviors are tolerated, what accountability means, how existing policies are applied, and the framing and implementation of better policies when existing ones have failed. Believing and supporting the parents whose children experience this kind of violence instead of protecting the institution. The removal of staff members who contribute to the problem, the promotion of those who contribute to the solution. It doesn't seem like anything like this is happening at LaGrange Middle School. Certainly the parents are not hearing about it if it is. And this feeling of a failure of leadership is only amplified when I hear that at a recent LMS equity team meeting, the participating teachers were asked to describe the forms of discriminatory violence they've observed at the school. When they were asked this, there was silence. Why is that? Do they not recognize it when they see it? Or are they afraid to name it for fear of retaliation from the administration? Or are they traumatized by an administration that abrogated its responsibility to foster a learning environment in which all children can thrive? Whatever the answer is, it doesn't say anything good about the climate of self-examination and improvement the school leadership has established at that school any more than the steady stream of reports of different forms of violence between students does. School leadership at LMS has failed, district policies have failed, and only a thoroughgoing review and amendment of both can restore our confidence that LMS can be a safe environment for our children. Thank you.
Okay, next we have, and give me a second to pull up my list. Iona Rutledge, would you like to speak to an agenda item? You can unmute yourself and answer that if you can.
I kind of would be piggybacking off of the gentleman who just spoke, but I'm not sure this is on the agenda.
Okay, you want to wait for the next one, or?
Sure.
Okay. Next on the list, Jennifer B. Would you like to speak to an agenda item?
Yes, I have an agenda item that I'd like to speak to.
Okay, give me just a second.
Mhm.
Then you should see the ability to share your video with the people on the Zoom. She'll need to tell you her whole name. She just said Jennifer B, so she'll have to say the whole thing.
My name is Jennifer Boy, and I live in Unionvale, New York. I just wanted to speak on the K-2 initiative. Just a little confused by it. So the K-3 initiative only addresses a K-3 problem. However, from the data, it appears that there is a problem in 4th and 5th grade with children not reading at grade level, but I don't see where that's addressed anywhere. You put the data in here, you're doing a K-3 initiative, but no one's addressing that 4th and 5th graders can't read. And it's pretty comparable across the board. So I'm just curious what we're doing for those 4th and 5th graders that don't know how to read on grade level. Because in 4th and 5th grade, you're not reading really for fun, you're reading to learn. So I'm just curious on how we're going to teach the 4th and 5th graders to read, since more than half of them don't know how to read. 34% in the presentation said that they did know how, that the data showed that they knew how to read. It's inexcusable that 34% of our 4th graders can't read. And it's even more inexcusable that 43% of 5th graders are reading, which leaves the other percentages. I just find it, very appalling. And I think that, possibly the district needs to look at how we're teaching these children to read, because obviously it's not working in any of the grades, because not one of the grades are any of the students actually reading. You've got 40% of 4th graders who know how to read, 29% of 2nd graders, 43% of 3rd graders, 34% of 4th graders can read, and 43% of 5th graders can read. And the red marks for 2 grades levels below are 40 to 30 to 54% of the children in the district are significantly behind in their reading. And I think this really needs to be addressed because it's not being addressed. And, I think it's part of the problem is that the programs that we're utilizing with the children, because it's a lot of the programs we're using are not giving them the proper skills. It's teaching them to guess a word, look at the picture, and that's really not the way you teach reading. So I really would just like for you all to take a look at how we're teaching our children, because no one's teaching reading. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hold on a sec. Give me just a second. All right, so we have Kristen Dion. Do you have a topic from the agenda?
Mine is a follow-up on what Curtis had said, so if I could just go ahead and read.
Is that an agenda item? Yes? You're okay
It
with
follows
that?
up on his related to communication, yeah.
Okay. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Like all of you, I'm concerned and heartbroken when I hear of any child being bullied on our buses or in our schools. All children should be able to come to school free from harassment and with the emotional safety needed to fully participate in the learning process. And when that bullying involves harassment based on one's color, race, or ethnicity, it's racist bullying, whether conscious or unconscious, by the student perpetrating the behavior. And it's our children of color who are suffering the consequences. We constantly hear that skin color shouldn't matter. I couldn't agree more. But the reality in our district is that for many of our children, it does matter. And it's affecting behaviors, actions, and words towards our children of color who are suffering as a result. We know that we have many teachers, counselors, and administrators who care about the needs of our students. We have written policies and procedures like DASA to assist in addressing issues of bullying. But when it comes to practice, particularly in instances of racist bullying, these procedures break down, usually to the detriment of the victim. And in the instances that Curtis referred to earlier, the process isn't working, and repeated escalating racist bullying has continued. Why? One important reason is that our teachers, counselors, and administrators lack the proper training to carry out established procedures on a consistent basis. The vital skill sets of creating safety plans and facilitating mediation and restorative justice vary greatly from school to school and person to person. One's experience is affected by one who is lucky or unlucky enough to have to work with. This should be a predictable process that is consistent regardless of which teacher, counselor, or DASA coordinator is administering it. When it breaks down, we must have diligent oversight and review to see where the process broke down and how we can fix it. It must be done in a timely manner. We must also not put the burden on the victim, the child, to have to take action. Once school staff have witnessed or been informed of harassment, it's their duty to act. Training is essential for staff to appropriately address issues of harassment. Without it, there's no development of a proper safety plan. And without an effective safety plan, we can't provide the needed safe space for effective mediation, and the restorative process cannot take place. This leads to no learning for the child who perpetrated the behavior and no safety or justice for the victim. We continue to hear from our leaders in the Arlington School District that racism and harassment will not be tolerated. But with the continued ineffective follow-through, we're showing our children that unfortunately, it will be. Thank you.
Could you give us the name and address, please?
Sure. It's Kristen Dion. It's Poquake, New York.
Thank you.
And the last one I have is Ava Woods Perot. Would you like to speak to the agenda?
Yes, I would. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
There you go.
Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you. I can't see you, but that's okay if you don't turn on your.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Just need your address.
124 Raymond Avenue, Poughkeepsie, New York. And I'm a parent of a child in the district. So, good evening, everyone. In Arlington, racist abuse is daily fare for students of color. On the bus, in the hallway, and at recess, students hurl at Black kids, quote, "Your ancestors picked this cotton," referring to their shirts, unquote. To Latinx kids, they spurt, "Hey, border crosser." And to Asian kids, they toss out COVID-related slander. Former and current students have said that these incidents happen all the time. Most recently, on Friday, November 12th, a white presenting middle schooler at LMS racially assaulted a 7th grade Black boy in the hallway with, "Pick my cotton, slave." Walking past the Black student, he had a belt raised in his hand. To us in On Par, Parents Against Racism in Arlington, this sounds like a throwback to the 1950s, but in Arlington, not much has changed. That's how people talk, kids tell us. There's nothing you can do about it, say students. Some kids feel it's racism, others say it's not intentional and excuse it by the fact that, oh, people know it's not really racist. White kids who feel they aren't racist explain that they saw other kids doing it, so they tried it out. These white students have not experienced racial bullying because white kids may be bullied, but not for their race. To all involved, the students who spew these insults, the students on whom they fall, and the students who witness it, there is general agreement that in order to get through each day at these schools, one must become desensitized to these racist forms of bullying. As the district employs no counselors of color and currently no racial literacy training for employees, students have to deal with this racism on their own. When families of kids of color who suffer these racist attacks attend school board meetings to advocate for change, they encounter angry parents who are condemning the teaching of so-called critical race theory, which we don't even teach. And they rage at the focus on skin color as a measure of inequality, because white kids are supposedly made to feel guilty by such discussions. Deploying sound bites like focus on character, not skin color, or go back to the basics of reading and math, no social emotional learning, these parents want to shut down discussions on racism. Perhaps we could forget about racism if only kids would stop bullying on the basis of skin color. If only more than just self-selecting and caring teachers, administrators, and staff stop discriminating and disproportionately disciplining on the basis of skin color. And only if our communities weren't racially segregated and historically disenfranchised along racial lines. In the meantime, we need to courageously and honestly teach all children why it is wrong to use race as a weapon. This problem will not go away on its own. Most people may not even recognize their racial biases, which speaks to the need for deep and ongoing racial literacy training. Most people do not know that our district has been cited by New York State for disproportionate disciplining of Black and brown male students, or that we have only 2% teacher diversity in the district of 8,000 students. In any case, with restorative justice practices in which students engage,
Pleasure of the board that we do non-agenda. Very well. We'll move on to the non-agenda speakers.
I want to be clear of that, because last time we got into a little bit of a, so if we do it now, we're not going to do it
Right.
later. Okay.
This will be the last opportunity to speak since we're doing it now. So just stepping it up a little bit.
Wait a minute. So we're not gonna have public comment at the end?
We're doing it now.
But don't you think I think we should have it at the end, so then people can comment on what we talk about. Yeah.
Let's move on. Let's do that. That's why we have an agenda. Okay, moving on to reports and discussion.
They just made the decision you will be able to speak at the end. Yeah.
Austin Road presentation, Dr. Kelly Murray.
Our school has approached this presentation with the hope of enlightening those listening to how exactly our 100-day focus priorities translate into the day-to-day practice at Knox-on Road, and what this work looks like, feels like, and sounds like for our students, staff, and community. Humans have used stories to frame thinking and convey important topics throughout history. Even today, in this age of technology, stories remain a powerful tool for communication, with people more quickly and accurately remembering information first presented in the form of a story. I'd like to welcome everyone, Dr. Moyer, all of our board members, cabinet, central office staff, colleagues, and community members. Thank you for this opportunity to share just part of our story. Special thank you to our Knox-on Road staff, our teachers out late tonight, here to support the presentation. I hope as all of you listen, you feel a well-deserved sense of pride for what you are creating each day here at Knox-on, because I couldn't be more proud to be part of this team. The September iReady ELA results serve as an impetus for our first 100-day priority area. As we work to improve our ELA results, and specifically our student performance in the domain of vocabulary, we began to work with Dr. Chambray at Marist College, who helped us to reflect on our current instruction in vocabulary across all grade levels. In addition, our work with Eric Scheninger on personalized learning and with Megan Hargrave on literacy is evident through all of our classrooms. When you look at these pictures, you see hands-on, student-centered, experiential learning opportunities, where broadly speaking, the focus is on customizing the learning experience for each student according to his or her unique skills, abilities, preferences, background, and experiences. We anticipate that this approach within our classrooms will improve a wide range of student outcomes, from engagement to achievement to well-being. I wanted to focus on the picture on the right up here. I know you all have this presentation ahead of time, and if you click on the links, it tells the story for each picture. But the one I want to focus on is the one up here on the right, the Speedy sound wall. Our first grade teachers created this Speedy sound wall as they explored phonics instruction within their classrooms. They realized what they were doing in their classroom was having such a positive impact on each of our first grade students. They wanted to extend this learning to the rest of our school. They taught our students that the purpose of learning to read is so our kids can make meaning of the world around them. And they encouraged their students to bring in words that they see throughout their lives, from candy wrappers to movie tickets to restaurant menus and everything in between. The teachers created the sound wall, which if you look closely at that sound wall in our hallway, you'll learn the process that any child goes through to learn to read. So our kids brought in all of their words from their world, sorted those words based on the rules that help them to read those words, and now we have our Speedy sound wall. What they didn't expect to happen was that the rest of our school now uses that Speedy sound wall to enhance student learning, whether it's a third grade teacher, a fifth grade teacher, or anyone in between. So kudos to our first grade team. Our community is not the same when you are not here. This is a simple yet powerful message that we want our students to know. Simply put, they matter and attendance matters. Absenteeism in the first months of school can predict poor attendance throughout the school year. Half the students who miss 2 to 4 days in September go on to miss nearly a month of school by the end of the school year, making our work in this focus area crucial and urgent. Through a Check and Connect mentor program, utilizing our teaching assistants, our office staff, our security greeter, our nurse, and more, each targeted student has set goals related to improving their attendance, and it celebrates with their Check and Connect mentor when they have made progress to their goals. The impact of these Check and Connect relationships speak for themselves. I want you to listen while a few of our students express in their own words the impact that Check and Connect mentors have on them. And I would like you to know that in the recording of this clip and the others within this presentation, a 6-foot distance was maintained and masks were only removed so that you could hear our students loud and clear in this type of presentation format.
Check and Connect is where people who missed 10 or more days last year in 2021, and Check and Connect is just something where you can talk, and when you have problems, you know your teacher and you know who to talk to get the problems out, and don't keep the problems inside and you can actually let someone know, like, and Check and Connect just really helps me, like I enjoy going down there every morning or afternoon or at the end of the day and just talking to my Check and Connect, Mr. Wolf, our security guard.
My Check and Connect is Miss Torada, teacher here.
My Check and Connect is Mrs. Toma, the secretary. I enjoy my time, Mr. Wolf, because we get to talk and know each other. And, like, it's just fun going down there every day and seeing her.
I enjoy going to Miss Torada because she's funny, she's loving and caring, and when I have a problem, she helps me solve it.
I like going down to see Mrs. Toma because I get to help her decorate and we do cool projects together.
I wanted to show some of the pictures up here because I wanted you to get an idea of how the Check and Connect mentors celebrate with the kids. It's not prizes, it's not candy, it's the picture at the bottom, and I think it's cross stitching. Our secretary has taught her Check and Connect how to do that. You see kids in the gym playing basketball. Our security greeter shows one of our students how to use the system to observe kids outside at recess playing and what it's like to be a security greeter. Building relationships while celebrating the success and goals of the success and achievement of our students. So I just want to point out, I know the slide shows it loud and clear. We targeted 50 students, those 50 students who missed 10 or more days last school year. We set a goal. That goal was that at the end of the first trimester, we wanted those students to have missed less than 5 days. So we want improvement, we want growth and progress. So of those 50 students at the end of trimester 141 had met their goal, which is 82%. But I wanted to highlight that 35 of those students, which is 70%, had actually missed 2 or less days this school year to date. And 15 of those students have perfect attendance to date, which speaks to our Check and Connect mentors.
Can Connect is where people.
What did you do specifically to improve the attendance rate?
So it's interesting because we wanted just a baseline. So we started off, we didn't look into each of the reasons for why those 50 students missed 10 or more days. We just decided, and we knew that that meant for some, it was a fluke. It was just something that happened that year. It was a death in the family. It was a sickness, right? But we decided we were going to keep it a baseline. All 50 of those students, we were going to target for Check and Connect. And so they missed 10 or more days. That's what we focused on, not necessarily the reason behind the why. We went into it assuming that if we could build strong relationships with the students and the families, that would encourage them. We were there to support them, to help them with needs that they may have in the community, that would encourage them to be there. So our Check and Connects were assigned to those students, and there was honestly no specific agenda that I used with those Check and Connect mentors for how to connect with the kids. We watched videos on restorative practices. We watched videos on schools where staff has mentored students. We listened to videos of students talking about how important mentors have impacted their lives. And then I let the Check and Connect mentors come up with their own plan. And so for some of them, you saw on that last slide, the middle picture just shows a chart. So for many of them, they use a chart and they target with kids, we want 10 days in a row. Let's do what we can to try to get 10 days in a row, and then we're going to celebrate. And when the students are there, the students check in with the mentor each morning. The mentor lets them know how happy they are that they're there. If by chance they're not there, those mentors reach out. They send postcards, they send notes home, letting them know how much they miss them. And you see the outcomes that we've had with the relationships being built.
So are there other students other than the 50 that now have a run rate that will not meet your goal?
Other than right now, we're focusing on these 50 in terms of this goal, but then overall, we track attendance for our entire school. We are going about that in a really positive way with our schools. So in our Every Friday newsletter, we're showing the attendance rates for every grade level, and we're trying to stay as close as we can to that 100%.
So you said at the beginning that the indicator in the first trimester would end up being an indicator for the full year. So are there students who are past their indicator for the first trimester would indicate that there's a problem that's not in the 50 that you're tracking.
Absolutely. Okay.
So how are you dealing with those?
So for those students, we have a letter that goes home from me at the end of every trimester that highlights for the parents the amount of absences that those children have received. We do phone calls from our nurse's office, our teachers check in with those families, let the students and the families know how important it is that they're here. Our hope is that those students don't reach 10 or more days at the end of the school year. If that did happen, despite all of our proactive measures, they would then become students in our Check and Connect program for the following year. So we're sort of targeting it from both angles. We're focusing on those students who have shown that they need the additional support. And then throughout the year, we're also tracking those students who are showing us on a weekly, monthly basis that they need it.
Can I ask you one more question? It's probably an unfair question. So I'm just so happy to see a principal in front of us. I don't think we've had that this has happened this year. And you may be the first, so lucky you, right? Is it a how do you know how to fix it if you don't understand the root causes of it?
I think what we're doing with our Check and Connect is I don't want to say we don't understand the root cause. Every bit, the next part of what I'm going to be sharing with you is all about connectedness, community connectedness. And there's so much research out there about connectedness and about students who have experienced trauma and how they can overcome that experience of trauma that they've had with one positive relationship. So the power of that one positive relationship is what we're working on with our Check and Connect program. And we're committing ourselves to make sure that every one of those 50 students that we target, that at the end of every day they can say that at least they have, we know that they have more, but that at the very least they have one positive relationship. And what we're finding is that our kids are telling their story to us. They're talking about why they weren't here. They're talking about what they would need more of in order to be here and feel comfortable being here. So although we didn't target it from the beginning, we've done that before, and I think schools have done that before, where we try to imagine all of the reasons that could be impacting a family, and we try to target those things, provide more community support, or whatever else. We've just approached it this way because we've had success. But we are looking at building connectedness in many other ways that we know will impact our entire population.
Well, I have a question. If you do have students currently that are not part of the 50, maybe the first trimester, there's maybe 20 students who miss more than 10 days, why wouldn't you want to bring them on board immediately to make that connection instead of waiting a whole school year, missing more days and or school time, and get them on the program next year? Like, what is that thinking?
Yeah, that's something that we could certainly look into when we're looking at 50 students. And so we really want those relationships to be meaningful. So we're talking about, I think it would be hard to find a place where our secretary, during their lunch, our security group, this is during the school day on top of everything else that we're doing. And because it's a priority, we value it, we're doing it. We're going to continue to do it. I think that you're right. That's something to consider about how we can possibly add more students to a specific Check and Connect throughout the year. For now, we're addressing it in other ways, but you're right. There's a difference. We're trying to sort of preserve this experience that we're creating, and then we're trying to remedy this other situation in a different way. But it is definitely something that we can consider. Yeah. Okay. So this next slide talks about that community connectedness that we were just talking about. Personally, I have a passion when it comes to understanding the impact of trauma on children and how we can create communities that change the trajectory, allowing them to overcome their demographic fate and the sort of hand that they were dealt. Research shows that youth who feel connected to people and institutions within their communities are buffered from other risk factors in their lives. With this learning, as a school, we are focused on increasing our connectedness as a prevention strategy for our youth and their future. Studies show that youth who feel more connected to their community report lower levels of depressive symptoms, social anxiety, suicidal ideation, conduct problems, and instead have a higher self-esteem and self-reported confidence in their own ability to cope and to problem solve. If you were to ask me, I would tell you that there's no single more powerful thing that we could be doing on a Friday afternoon at Knoxon Road than facilitating a restorative circle among our community aimed at building connectedness. The fact that we routinely have 10+ staff members present at each family cafe on a Friday afternoon shows their commitment as well. And what do our families say about their experience with Family Cafe, and specifically our use of restorative circles to build connectedness? Let's let that.
Describe Family Cafe in one word. I'm going to say provoking. You know, it's welcoming, it's community, it's all of those things, but at the end, every time when I leave, it's just very thought-provoking, and I'm always thinking of what did I learn, what am I going to do the next time, all of those.
Family Cafe brings a sense of foundation. It's somewhere we all have to start from. We all feel inclusive, and we have to start somewhere to build the relationships, to involve ourselves and our children in our community.
The Family Cafe presents like a homeschool community highway. Like, forget the bridge. You know what I mean? Because it's like exit stops, like you were saying, Frank, because there's so many other people. There's teachers, there's faculties, there's you know, there are other parents. And the other really cool thing, I think, is that the other parents are at different grades.
Yeah.
So not everybody, I'm not interacting with all fourth grade parents, right? There's some kindergarten parents, there's some first grade, third grade parents. And that kind of blending, to me, are the exits off the highway, on and off of the highway.
Other parents that were here, the staff, everybody had different diverse backgrounds. They came from different cultures, different skin colors, different way that they grew up, different careers, different professions, but they all were similar in so many ways because they all wanted the same things for their children. They all wanted their children to grow up being good human beings, showing high amounts of empathy and just be good people, you know, more than academics and anything else that they achieve. But they all wanted the same thing, which made me feel so good.
Draws you in almost like a magnet. So if you think about magnetic connection, right? Those magnets are very difficult to pull apart. And once they start to connect to each other and they stack on, it becomes sort of an infinite, you know, magnetic force that pulls to something, what I believe would be very positive. Safety, inclusion, self-awareness.
Being in a group that all share the same sort of ideas, they have different flavors, but all have the same sort of goals in mind, that's refreshing.
The words that come to mind, the experience that comes to mind is when we have that expression, it takes a village. Here in that circle, it was a village of people all striving for the same thing, for our students, for our kids, to better themselves academically and socially. And that's, the connectedness started to come together when we joined there.
And there's a bonus, because my daughter loves the after school interaction. Loves it. Again, with children she would never interact with. So she too is in a growth environment while I am growing and her father is growing in the Family Cafe.
Excited, I guess I want to say, to see what the next meeting is going to be, or you know, what's the next topic going to be.
Last but not least, we join the rest of the district in making the use of professional learning communities a priority within our school. The first video shows our team of fourth grade teachers, many of whom are here tonight, talking about the impact of PLCs on their teaching and learning after together they analyzed data and divided students into intervention and enrichment groups, then used research-based instructional strategies to improve weak skill areas.
Bedtime is
it's incredible. We get to use each other as the resources that we truly are. Coming from the special ed department that Jen and I are both in, to get to speak to our general ed colleagues and hear their great ideas, to share our own. I think it all makes us feel really empowered. And I think that really rubs off on the kids. And I think that's partly why they really enjoy that time with us, is because we feel empowered and then they feel empowered, and it becomes this great relationship and this great balance. And I agree, I think more time would lead to even more production. And we could get to meet with our colleagues who are a grade level above or a grade level below.
And then we also have that PLC time to work on our own, to create the materials and to assess what we've done, and to really, instead of just like, oh, all these great ideas, and then the ideas kind of fly up into the air, we've got the time to work on those ideas and really implement them.
So having this time and having this be a priority is invaluable. You know, we're able to collaborate, we're able to take ideas and use them not just in PLC, but in our classroom, in our own intervention groups.
I want to say that I have appreciated this time, this scheduled time so much. Being in the 3 through 5 special class, it's hard to catch a break during the day. So knowing that this is every day 5, I have coverage, I know it's coming, is really very meaningful. I look forward to it, and it's valuable time for my colleagues and for my kids. So thank you.
Time is not only valuable, it's kind of been like necessary this year to wrap our head around all these awesome things we're trying to do. We need this time, and we're so grateful for it, and we'd like more if possible.
Like, out as what's the most efficient way that we can get every
student shows you what that really looks like and sounds like. So when you hear people talk about we need more time for PLC, or PLC is so beneficial, that shows actually what it looks like in the problem-solving approach that our teachers are taking, analyzing of data that they're doing while they're in their PLC time. This second video is very quick, and it just shows the impact of the groupings that those teachers established. So what was really unique about this for 4th grade team and their PLC work is that as they analyzed data at a grade level, and they saw where there were strengths and weaknesses among the students, they decided to join together as a grade level of adults, and they divided all of those students at 4th grade into smaller groups. So although I might be Mr. Rayo, I might have 4 students that are actually Mrs. Murphy's students, but I'm teaching them this specific skill area because it's a strength of mine, it's what I've researched, it's what I'm passionate about, and that's how they divided their students, which is a really unique way to look at providing intervention and enrichment. Quick video that Mrs. Toronto put together for us that shows our students at work as a result of that. Can you tap at this? Good. Now write each sound.
W-O-U-L-D. What word is that?
Wood.
Did you erase it? I think I need every.
Exactly what they need during that time as a result. Bedtime is communities.
Bedtime is
here at Knoxon is the way in which we balance the creation of scholars with the creation of really good people. This last slide shows some of the ways in which we teach, facilitate, honor, and celebrate the actions of our students aimed simply at doing good, giving back, and thinking of others. The power of their voices, the spirit in their hearts, the uniqueness of their approach, and the genuine pride they show, knowing that their actions make a difference, are what we hope stick with them beyond the walls of Knoxon. This first shows our tribute. All of these things took place within the last 3 months here at Knoxon Road. So we started with our bus driver tribute, where we honored our bus drivers, entirely student-led, student-created tribute to our bus drivers. Our new psychologist has created an addition to that bus driver tribute, where we have now our bus drivers are reporting to us with thumbs up or thumbs down student behavior. And at the end of the month, we're going to be tallying, and some bus is going to get to have this giant bus of the month magnet that they get to drive around and showcase until the next month, and we'll see who earns it. One of our bus drivers, he actually said this to me when I was standing out in our foyer at the tribute. So it's moments like this why he loves what he does. We did a custodians tribute the following month. We are so proud and grateful for our custodians and the work that they do here. Again, this was student-led. We pretended to have a fire drill. We went outside, our whole school was outside, and out walked our custodians, who then received a standing ovation from all of our students. And one of our students wrote this: most custodians are quiet and just clean, but our knocks-on custodians are different. They are kind, caring, and really friendly. You tell really funny jokes and always interact with us. Even a simple hello makes my day. I love that you're able to take out the trash, clean up a spill on the floor, or mop, but you're talking to us and telling us to have a nice day. Sometimes I see you putting up the flag and you're also waving to the bus drivers. You remind me to be more friendly and kind too. And then last but not least, we just did our tribute to the veterans. Again, this was entirely student-led, so the students were able to choose a way that they could express their gratitude for our veterans in a way that they're passionate about. So we had gymnasts, we had singers, we had musicians, we had students who read poetry, students who read their own poetry that they had written. And so again, Mrs. Torado just captured a little snippet to show our students paying tribute to our veterans. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to tell part of our story.
Thank you. I got a comment. Looking at district mission and these kids are living, empower students to be self-directed. Lifelong learners are learning from all these people that they're honoring. Contribute to the community, lead passionate, purposeful life. Thanking people that normally they don't see or don't necessarily get thanks during the day. I think it's fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for sure.
Can you explain what's on our tables here?
So one of our slides showed a lesson that we wanted to feature in our presentation. This was a third grade lesson where the third grade teachers were really inspired by the work of Eric in the presentation he presented for us on personalized learning, hands-on learning. And so this middle picture shows the first part of what you see on your table. And what it started as was a lesson on the beaks of birds. And so this teacher, the next picture up above the Find Your Light project, where it shows what the teacher had put together. So the students were using different objects to collect what was representing food that a bird would eat. So they were using a toothpick to try to pick up a marble. They were using a spoon to try to pick up, I think there were little bugs in there, pretend bugs, right? And the students had to track, and the whole purpose of the lesson was actually a science lesson, yet the teacher was doing it in a hands-on way to see if he saw an improvement in the student vocabulary acquisition because of the hands-on experience. And so that's how it started. I happened to be in there observing this lesson, and I loved it, of course, and so I stole it, which is what we all do when we love something. And so I asked him if I could borrow all of the materials and then went to a second grade classroom. We were doing a lesson in there about celebrating that we're all part of our community, more of a social skills lesson, using the book All Are Welcome. And so I decided to adjust how I was planning to do that social skills lesson by having the kids start the same way they did in that science lesson, the beaks of a bird. And I used that hands-on approach, learning about they all have different beaks and why none is better than the other one. They're all just different, right? And I tied it into the quote from the story about a shelter from adversity is the community that we're a part of. And then I asked our kids to talk about how they're an important part of our community and then choose someone within their community that they too feel is special. and to highlight that. And we just thought you might want, we know you haven't been in a school. We wanted to just expose you entirely to our work. So, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. I don't think you have to get too hard to know what your favorite part, my favorite part of your presentation was this year, but we could chat about that in a private setting, not public setting. All right. Moving on. Next item, B, literacy. Presentation by Dana Brown.
Good evening. I'm happy to be here tonight to talk with you about our K-3 literacy initiative in Arlington. We are focused on our Board of Ed goal for academic growth and success, which you see pictured there. So our K-3 initiative is how we are using our COVID recovery response as supported by the ESSER grant. We're focused on supporting our teachers in using data to personalize learning, to address our learning gaps, and extend our district program to the science of reading along with our balanced literacy approach. We have partnered with 2 consultants to do this work with us, one being Megan Hargrave, who is pictured there, and the other being the Rose Institute at Manhattanville College, which we're working in collaboration with Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES. In this work, we're focused in 3 areas, as you see there. I'm going to talk more about the structures of instruction and how that relates to independence and interdependence for our K-3 learners, as well as their personalized learning and some explicit teaching strategies. We'll also touch on how this relates to the content of our curriculum, and we're going to be focused tonight on our F&P data. So talking more about that data review, my purpose tonight is to bring you through our Fontes and Canal benchmark assessment data. We're going to look at it before and after COVID. In lieu of the cohort data, we're going to dig more deeply into our fall data and look at it by topic. We can certainly revisit cohort data another time if you like to. And then lastly, we're going to look at an individual student so we can see how we use this data in the classrooms to inform our instruction and tell our story about our youngest readers. Our iReady data in ELA was already previously presented on. So our Fontes and Canal benchmark assessment system measure. It measures these different areas: oral reading, which is accuracy and fluency, our comprehension skills, which involve predicting, inferring, making connections, and analyzing. It identifies a student's current reading level. I know many of you are familiar that it targets students A through Z and gives you a reading level according to the alphabet. We'll talk a little bit more about those later on in the presentation. And we use this to inform our instruction, personalize it for our readers, and determine what supports they need in their growth. So taking a look at our K-5 data, pre-COVID, 70% of our students were reading on grade level. To give that number some context, unfortunately in our country, literacy rates are rather low. We do not have Fontes and Canal data nationwide to equivalent to or equate to, but we do have the NAEP, which is a national reading test. And according to the NAEP from 2019, 35% of 4th graders were reading on grade level. Prior to COVID in Arlington, 70% of our students were reading on grade level. Post-COVID, as we will look at, 40% of our students are reading on grade level, according to our fall benchmark. Currently, our 2nd graders are presenting our largest area of concern. 29% of them are reading at grade level. As a former second and first grade teacher, our second graders are our students who have not yet had an uninterrupted year during COVID. So we'll talk more about how we're recovering from that for them. Lastly, fluency is an area of focus for students when they're reading at their independent level. Fluency is the total number of words a reader reads in 1 minute, subtracting the number of errors. And we'll talk about why we target fluency when a student is at their independent level so that we can keep them on the growth trajectory to the next level. This graph shows our fall Fontes and Canal benchmark assessment data. So the benchmark that we just did with students returning to us for this full year. I know that you also have the presentation, and I'll talk it out a little bit. I'm sorry if those numbers are a little small on the screen. So our green bars are showing the percentage of students that, in spite of COVID, are reading on grade level. So for example, in grade 1, 40% of our students are reading on grade level at this time of the year. 16% of our first graders are 1 level below. 44% of our first graders are 2 or more levels. So I won't go through each grade level unless there's one that you'd like me to talk out loud, but we'll revisit this.
Could you tell me I guess maybe chart 4, I'm still going to look at the same number on this chart for 7th grade. Is that the same 29% you talked about earlier?
Yes.
What was that number pre-pandemic?
I can get that for you. We used, and Rob Carroll, our director of data, helped prepare these figures tonight. The 70% we put together K5 to give you an average, but we can break it down by grade level for you in a cohort fashion as well.
I guess, yeah, I'm just curious of what the 29% is. Was that 80% last time, 70%? Is it that seems like a significantly low. We're not talking about it.
Yeah, so we're going to put that a little bit more in context with the individual students. And certainly we could talk for hours, especially if we were sitting in one of our primary classrooms, about how interrupted instruction due to COVID affected our youngest kids and why we see those large gaps now in this data. And we'll also talk about how we're already starting to see a rebound with some of the instruction that we're able to provide now.
Do we have a target for the rebound?
I'm going to show you a trajectory for an individual student, and I believe we do plan on doing some predicting as well. Looking at the fall data a little more deeply, so this is our Fontes and Canal benchmark by topic. So once we find an independent reading level for our students, the assessment is giving us information on each of these different topics. So a student that's landed on their independent level, we look to see what area of reading do we want to focus on to help them build the skills to get to the next text level. So you see here that when students are reading on their independent level, they're generally doing pretty well with their word solving, their phonetic skills. Inferring and analyzing is still in a decent space. Analyzing out of the 2 comprehension categories we may want to spend a little bit more time with. But our focus here is the fluency. And with our reading processes, all of these topics are connected. So how you word solve connects to your rate of fluency, how fluent you are connects to your comprehension. Many times your fluency slows down when you're working harder to comprehend or you're comprehending more fully. But this is why fluency is one of our areas of focus on increasing that accuracy rate for students.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I a little bit struggled with this chart, but you're explaining it better. It's helping me in your explanation. because the previous chart shows so many kids reading below level, right? So it actually, at first I was like, well, this looks like better news. But actually, I was going to ask you the question of how the two charts relate. But now I'm feeling like, is this also telling me that even though they're at those levels that are, not great on the previous page, right? That they don't necessarily have a firm grip on some of that stuff, even where we have them on the chart. Because where they are on the chart, they're still maybe satisfied. That's why there's so much green, right? Because they have reached this level for being evaluated on Canal. Am I saying that right? But the light green means they're not really rocking it at that level. Is that true?
The satisfactory is still an acceptable level for the assessment. So the green, and we use green because go good. So the green is still an acceptable level on the assessment. When we have a student at an independent level, and those are the percentages that we're reporting, we're real confident that that's the level the student can pick up the book and read completely independently. As many of you know from previous talk that we've done about reading, kids can generally get through text several levels above their independent level. It's called an instructional level, and at times we do assess for that too.
So would it mean that the yellow and red kids captured there, so they're not the same kids, right? So otherwise they would have been put down a level. But so some kids are just not achieving some of these,
So what this shows us is when students are doing well on the assessment at text level M, they're bringing all these processes in to read, but there's a couple of areas where maybe they're not as strong as others. And so when we focus on the fluency, that helps them get to the next level. But for the most part, their fluency is fine at text level M, but it's not strong enough to get them to text level N yet.
Right, and the M or N might be a couple of levels below where we would hope that they would be for that grade.
Possibly, yeah.
So that's what the previous slide is showing us, right?
Yes. Okay. So there's only so many pieces that go into our reading data, and this is a good time for me to talk a little bit about the assessment and what it looks like and why there's so many moving parts to talk about with it. So we're glad to have iReady in the district. It's a computer-based assessment. Kids sit on the computer, they answer their questions, it's over. But we also have this assessment, because this is where teachers interact with kids one-on-one as a reader and get a very deep look at what they're doing as a reader. So in this assessment, a teacher sits one-on-one with each of their students and reads a book that they have an informal assessment data may be matching to their level. They listen to them read it out loud, they note their accuracy, their word solving, and then they have a conversation with them about the book, ask them questions, they're able to prompt them more. So it's a very detailed assessment. I thought about putting a little video in to see. I'm so grateful that Dr. Murray put so many visuals in and how joyful actually this assessment can be for kids. But there's certainly more support that I can provide in adding to what this assessment looks like in the different strands.
Marianne, are you clear? Because can you go back a slide?
Yes.
I've never been clear that.
The one is super duper optimistic. The red is like this, and then the other slide is
right. So
it's a 29% level.
Right. So yeah, the second slide is a little misleading if you're trying to decide where your kids are and how much help they need, in my opinion. The second slide is basically telling you how firm their toehold is on the level they've achieved so far. Is that kind of what it is?
So let me see if this helps.
I'm getting nods from
So the second slide took all these greens. We took all those greens, just the greens, not the yellows and reds.
Why didn't you take the yellows and reds?
because we were showing you the kids that are on level.
Oh,
Here are the
that's
strengths.
actually very different than what I thought. I thought it was the same kids, and you were evaluating how they did on these performance targets at whatever level they are reading, and that you had all the kids in there. So that.
The first one is showing is or is not.
What are you calling the first one?
The first one is the one with more red.
The first one is the one that had the
The one
29%.
right before this
Correct.
one, with the 29%.
That's the first one.
If you're in green on that one, you are at grade level.
Correct, but I didn't think
And
the
then
second child.
those kids that are at grade level are into the second spot. You're not talking about the kids that are 1 or 2 levels below.
But how would we know that? Like, I didn't get that at all, because, you know, if we go to the second slide, so that says K-5 fall 2021, right? So I thought that this was all the same kids, but it was just sorting them as to how they're, that's actually why I didn't understand this chart, right? So.
I don't think you listened. I only got that out of the second. Not just by yourself.
And so what would we see if we had all the kids in there?
Right, where's
What
the
would we
chart
see?
for the kids
Because
one
honestly,
or lower grade level?
if a kid is in fourth grade and reading at a first grade level, I mean, wouldn't you, if you're really discussing how he's reading that D level book, right? And wouldn't he or she fall in here too? I don't know, it doesn't matter, I'm just trying to understand the data.
So this is a very public example of how my lesson is not going well. Sharing this information with you. So I will go back to how we were showing with you, but we have a couple more slides to go through about how I can explain we do use this assessment information for each student that we assess. This assessment is based on informing our instruction, and we'll talk more about how we use that to target.
All right, but just to clarify, you get the same data on the kids that are red on the first slide. The teacher gets the data that says how that child did on fluency and analyzing. Below, right, but still, they need to figure out like what elements of reading that child needs to move to the next level, right?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes. Okay, but we don't have a chart for that one? For the grade levels below? This is showing that when a student is on the level that they assessed at, and I apologize if I have not explained this clearly. So when the student is on the level they have assessed at, here's how their skills fall out, right? I got that.
Yeah, no, and you know, and I appreciate your explanation, because really I'm trying to understand, you know, the magnitude of what our staff is up against and what our students are up against, you know, and funny you should talk about cohort data. That would be, I think, interesting too, to see how some of the kids we've kind of taken through the pandemic have rebounded or not, you know, and how that compares to the trajectory of what we would typically expect of a cohort going through an elementary.
We will have that ready. Right, because I just think that this is helpful for focusing on one group of kids, but we should have it.
I guess I would like to understand how much choice is working. I like to understand the chart and what it's trying to tell me about how kids are doing.
Let me show you this. So this is an individual student. This is a reader that I know well. She started in kindergarten with us. Our Fontes and Canal, we do not give in kindergarten until mid-year. So we're looking here at her first grade data. So again, you do have a copy of this presentation. I apologize because this looks small to me, so I apologize if it looks small to you. The black line on the line graph shows on-level results. So the black line is what we intend for all students to travel. The red line is our district average of how students are performing on this assessment. Our yellow line is a building average, the particular school building average for this student. The blue line is the student. The dotted line is the individual trajectory for this student. So I did capture from what Marianne is saying is it would be helpful to have a graph like this for our students as a group to see how they're traveling the trajectory. So let me tell you this student's story in terms of the graph. So she enters first grade in the fall and she is below level. Mid-year, she's right on level. End of first grade, she's right on level and traveling that trajectory. There is a lot of text level acquisition that needs to happen in first grade. It's like a running start for reading. Fall of second grade, summer slide, she is below level again. Mid-year, we have her back on level. She ends second grade above level. Third grade starts again. When we start third grade, there's a sharp turn in what's expected in terms of reading text. Summer slide, and she falls below grade level. Mid-year, she's on grade level again. End of third grade, she's on grade level again. She starts fourth grade, and then she's dipped below again. Mid-year, she's on grade level, and then COVID happens, yet she still continues to slightly exceed at the end of fifth grade her personal trajectory. So there are also...
So when did COVID hit in this chart?
COVID hit spring 2019 to 2020. That would be the last benchmark, so the end of her fourth grade year.
Well, what's interesting to me is that the red line didn't dip. I was actually thinking that this was perhaps a student example from before the COVID. I would have expected district average, even if this child did okay. We're seeing on the other side that we have a real fall off from 70 to 40. So this was maybe before they weren't home off. What you're saying is this is maybe the very beginning of the pandemic.
This story starts with a student in first grade, and she was in first grade in 2016. Okay, so following. So we are looking at our students, like our young learners, these are their paths. Reading is a complex skill to teach another human being. So there's lots of dips, ins and outs, different demands, different things that happen in the individual student, different things that happen in the environment. So this is part of the artistry that our teachers work with each day and teaching each of our students, and we strive to get them all there. This brings us to P3, what we're focusing on as our greatest area of need. And I thank you for the questions and comments because you're helping us get to this point because we know our demands are large. Of course, our greatest area of need is increasing the number of on-grade level readers. That is our main focus each day when we come into our classrooms. Next, it's supporting our fluent reading. As we know, fluency is the bridge between word recognition and comprehension. Lastly, we're focusing on growth over time for our young readers. It's always worth investing in our young readers. I think many of us who are also parents know how kids develop over time. We see a lot of them in 1 year, but in Arlington, we're invested in our kids' K-12, and we see this time and this growth. Our areas of focus in this initiative. We are looking to build independence for our young readers. It's really a beautiful thing to sit in our classrooms. We know how some of our kids are struggling, yet our teachers and principals make our schools and classrooms very joyful places. That's part of the key for our young people right now, to feel independent, to feel empowered, to feel in control of their reading. We're setting individual goals for them based on this data, and we're being very explicit about how we're teaching across our workshop structures. And let's be more specific about that. So for example, here is a concept that Megan Hargrave is working with us on the cycle of independence. This is one of our high leverage practices. So before, when we talked about balanced literacy, we talked about independence and dependence. We read aloud. Kids are really dependent on us in that. And then we move towards guided reading where we're supporting them. And then lastly, we end at independent reading. Well, what happens when we have these times of struggle for kids is they go right to dependence. And right now, if you sit in one of our primary classrooms, you get surrounded by love. Every 6-year-old wants your time. They all want to read with you. They all want to ask you a question. So one of our practices is we're introducing this concept of interdependence. So when you struggle, you don't come right to the one adult in the room. You have silent teachers. You have tools around the room that can help you word solve. This is very powerful for young kids to know what charts they can go to that help them with the word families. Next is our decodable text and how we transfer to authentic text. Many of you may have learned to read, like me, with Palo Alto readers, and we had those phonetic readers, and we learned how to read, but it wasn't a real meaningful text. It wasn't a book that you had a deep discussion about or worked on inferring or analyzing. So what we're working on now is decodable text did have their place. And when kids are struggling with phonics and foundational skills as they are now, we need to work with this decodable text, but we still need to link it to something authentic. So that looks like the hop on pop book, but saying to a student, take a book out of your book basket. You know, a Patricia Polacco book you read, where do you see these word patterns in this book? And lastly, here's another chart that we're working with Hargraves. This is an example of how our teaching is getting very explicit. So we're about to hit a benchmark in first grade when we get back from the holiday break, where we're striving for our students to be reading at text levels E and F. That is more your Dr. Seuss type readers. And these are the skills that we're trying to target, to give them those word-solving skills to attack that kind of text. So our blends and digraphs, endings are very important for kids to be able to read independently at that level. Now, just to sum up, this was a real quick walk through our K-3 initiative. There's a lot of moving parts to it. There's a lot of deep work going into it. I'm glad to talk more with you about it at any time that you like. I do want to acknowledge and thank our principals and our teachers and our librarians and our library clerk who are out tonight, who make this work come alive in our classrooms. It's really humbling to see all they do with our kids each day. I have a couple questions. So what are we doing to address the needs of the 4th and the 5th graders who are included in the initiative? So thank you for asking about that. A couple of different things. The Rose Institute work is K-8, the science of reading work. So we are on our superintendent's conference days providing those workshops to our intermediate level teachers. Our intermediate level teachers, like all of our teachers, are always working and focusing on their reading assessment data. So Dr. Murray showed some examples of the PLC work. That's happening at all levels. That's another place where our grade 4 through 5 teachers are working on reading assessment as well. 4th through 5th is considered intermediate. And I have another question. What changes are being made in our current reading curriculum using our grant money? And are the teachers being trained in other reading methods, other programs? Are we hiring more reading specialists? Those are all good questions. Thank you. We talked a little bit about how grade 2 is a focus. I did share some ideas with Dr. Rodriguez about how we could target some reading intervention for those grade levels. And I think we may be prepared to talk more about that with you. We're consistently reviewing our reading curriculum. So right now we're looking on the district level at different phonics and phonemic awareness programs. That's part of the work that Megan Hargraves is doing with us. So you'll see different programs like Wilson Reading Foundations, Teachers College Units of Study in Phonics. We have some reading specialists working with Wharton Dillingham, and we continue to layer on our supports that we have. It's just interesting with the grant money to sort of understand how it's being spent. So, understood.
You make a statement earlier that the second grade being the highest need at this moment in time is being linked to the fact that the pandemic has kept them out of the classroom for that amount of time. So that's why we're seeing the second grade as being the one that's needed.
It's a conclusion that one could draw, since our second graders have not had a full school year yet in person.
Okay. And if it's not all about the pandemic, what is happening perhaps differently for those kids if they've got more ground to make up than anybody else?
So there's a number of different things that we've worked on. We've adjusted pacing of curriculum maps. We've looked at different levels of support that we can provide in the classrooms. We're working on all different kinds of ideas of innovation. So, for example, our Overlook Primary School was gathering together its Reading AIS team, and it cycled through every student and gave them like a 6-week intervention while also developing Google Classroom ideas of intervention. So that's just one example of how at the building level, we're looking at this and using the available resources to target the need.
So at some point, you're going to see some post data on how all that fell out.
So a couple of things, I just wanted to interject here, and I apologize, Dana, but I think that there's something I want to just clarify. We focused a lot here on F&P, and the iReady test is relatively new to the district. But as an example, iReady has a whole list of resources along with it that helps guide teachers to take them to where the kid is at and what they need to do to get to the next level. So even though she used, for instance, the F&P data as an example, it's not the only thing at the teacher's disposal to try to, and when they get into their PLCs and everything, try to figure out what they need to do and where they need to go. But as far as your answer on follow-up presentation, our goal would be to bring you data at intermediate checkpoints throughout the year based on our district goals and the school's 100-day plans so that you have some idea, not just at the end, but in the middle of the year, and then as well as at the end of the year when we have some data that we plan to take into our administrator retreat. We want to share some end of year data with you so that we can set up some information and structure our board retreat to try to get some direction from you about where you'd like to see us focus some of our energy and attention. So the idea would be that we would get in a cycle here where you're regularly getting information on how we're doing in different areas.
Go ahead, go.
But all of the indicators would say that we need immediate help in the K-3. They're most impacted by generalization we can't support. But certainly, second graders would say at 29% literacy, that is if we don't do something that change the trajectory, if the class of 2032 is in trouble.
Well, there's no doubt. And so when people, it sort of came up tonight about the focus on grades K through 3. Reading at the end of grade level, reading on grade level by the end of grade 3 is a really important indicator of kids' future success in school. And so we knew and schools around the country have known that the younger readers, that their ability to function in a remote environment, teachers' ability to do what they need to do with the younger kids was really, really impacted. So between those two factors, that's why we decided to spend the majority of our focus on the early primary grade levels with our efforts here and our resource decisions. So, Ed, you're absolutely right. Like, it's absolutely critical that we get them to grade level. I mean, everybody would 100% agree with you on that.
So, are we doing enough soon?
Well, I mean, I think I would say this, and Dana and Daisy, I would encourage you to add your comments and thoughts. I think that there's always continued room for growth in terms of taking a look at our assessments and our practices and all that kind of thing. But I think that our teachers have responded very well to the work with Megan Hargrave. So I would say that I believe that they are doing everything they possibly can. I don't know if more resources is the answer at this point, to say, like, if we just poured more resources in, that would have a better impact than what we're currently doing. I think that we keep our class sizes pretty low at the primary grade levels. We have, I think, adequate staffing specialists. I think that we're trying to invest in the professional learning. So I believe that we're doing what we can do. And I don't know, I think the instructional people should definitely give you their take on that.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely.
Microphone.
I would definitely echo that. I think the work that we're currently doing with Megan Hargrave and with Eric Scheninger and personalizing learning is really the key in getting our students to move to the next level in their reading. Sometimes you may hear people are tempted to teach below grade level, right, to teach to where the student is. And if we do that, we'll never get the student to catch up and get to where they need to be. So as part of the work that we're doing with our consultants and our literacy specialists in the building is working to make sure that we are still teaching the grade level standards, but then supporting students in the small group instruction by doing a lot of the strategies that Ms. Brown talked about earlier today.
It makes sense for the second graders to be a group that we track all the way through to see if that is indeed happening. That becomes the target group, because they're the second graders that are impacted on both ends by the pandemic. Whichever, I don't know if it's F&P or I read it. I don't think any of them are really showing outstanding results. So it makes sense to have that as a benchmark part of our dashboard. I know we may not have a dashboard, but we just use that term anyway. That it becomes a focus group, because if they don't catch up, I'm not sure that we settle into a new level of mediocrity. It just doesn't.
Yeah. And we're going to be tracking all the grade levels, so you're absolutely right. And that's why we're doing the 3 benchmark assessments throughout the year, so that way we can see how the students did in the fall, how they're going through. We're going to do the F&P assessment again in the winter, and we'll be able to see if students are making adequate growth from the fall to winter, and if students that are not making sufficient growth, we'll be able to increase the level of interventions for them. But I agree, we're going to be tracking all of the students. You may remember we're also investing in Performance Matters. This is a data dashboard where we are capturing all the data, the iReady, the teacher reports, the FMP data. So we have everything in one place to be able to make really informed decisions. So the principals and directors can make really informed decisions based on what's happening.
Students across the board as a result.
It depends what measure we're looking at. So we can see the literacy data here. In iReady, we have about 65% of our students performing on grade level. And some of the differences between iReady and literacy is iReady is really looking at overall English language arts scores for our students, English language arts skills, the same that we would see in the state assessments.
Is iReady comparable to measurements in iReady today, comparable to measurement based pre-pandemic?
It has decreased. So all of our data points, we have seen a decrease in student performance pre-pandemic now. And that is why we're doing all of these different initiatives with personalized learning in the classroom.
So, I don't remember the next, when is the next report then of the three to the board? You do 3 iterations during the course of the year. When will the board see data across the district?
I don't have the board presentation calendar with me.
I believe, well, the next, we have different presentations scheduled each month on different areas of our work. But I believe that February is when we plan to bring back data that is primarily focused on the individual schools' 100-day plans. And a lot of their plans, a lot of their 100-day plans have to do with literacy, a literacy growth goal. So I think you'll get another check-in February. If there's something specific you want to see, we can, work to build different things in.
I have a question, but you want to go.
Yeah, before we go on, could I get a motion?
Yeah, we're just motion to extend.
I just need a motion to extend to 9:30.
Certainly, I would move that.
Second?
Kelly.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained.
You're first on the extension.
You're up there.
You go first on the extension.
You can't hear you unless you're up to the mic.
Yeah.
And
There's people at home.
I just want to make sure that we have that we not wait 6 months and wait till after the budget passed and all of those other things before we start having the added focus that we need to have to catch up. Because catch up is a whole different paradigm than trying to close the original gaps that we had before. So now we have additional gaps that so we're trying to close the initial gap, plus the gaps that have been necessitated by the pandemic. And I just want to, how do we do that? Are we trying to get back to a new normal, which is still includes gaps?
Well, I think the answer I would give you is that I think we have to take a look at the fact that whatever impact the pandemic has had to exacerbate gaps in achievement, what it's done is it's taken the range, and it's what was always important to personalized learning and look at individual differences. It's now actually widened that to where you've got kids like all over the place, and it's really been very challenging to teachers. And I think that I think we have to be honest with the fact that you're not going to fix this in 1 year or in a month. Like, this is going to be a multi-year process that we're going to have to just continue to stay, to be very, very purposeful and committed to all of these things that we're trying to put in place for a multi-year period of time before I think we see some of these scores rebound. But the monitoring piece, I think we're trying to get better at getting the organization focused on outcomes and put some of the mechanisms in place where they can do that type of work maybe a little bit better than they might have been able to do in the past. So that's our goal anyway, is to support those people. But the challenge is very real, and it's impacting our teachers because of the enormous, they feel the enormous weight. And I think that, well, I think we need to keep that data out there in front of people, and we need to be very, very, feel that sense of urgency. I think we also have to have a realistic understanding that it is going to be, I think, a multi-year period of time before we see things, fully back to where we would want them to be.
And I agree with that. I don't think you can fix it overnight. I wouldn't expect that. But I do think we should challenge ourselves and fix it by sometime. I don't know if that's 18 months, 24 months, 36 months, but there should be a plan in the district that says we're going to close those achievement gaps and get back to where we should be ahead of the curve, quite frankly, 2 years, 3 years from now. And you guys can tell me the time, because I just don't know. But it seems to be that what gets measured gets done. And we challenge ourselves to get there. If that takes more resources, it's fine. It's not an indictment of anyone's work. That's not enough work, too much work. We need more people, more resources, more technology, more creativity, whatever it takes to catch that up. It would be great if we were ahead of the curve in terms of recovery, rather than trying to chase the recovery for the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, well, it can't be 5 to 10 years.
Let's hope that.
Okay, I
actually have a comment too. Don't move on.
Oh, I'm done. I fell up there at home.
No, it's all good. I just thought you were going to move on, and okay.
Trying to point out you go through.
Oh, okay.
The people at home can't hear you.
They can't.
There you go.
You're close.
Killing me back here, Ed. Killing me. Come on. Be a rock star.
This is normal, almost normal.
This is slightly off what you presented on tonight, but I can't help thinking when we talk about the impact on second graders. And I heard the questions in the first public comment about, and of course, the board is very concerned and interested in what's going on in our middle schools, that children who were affected by, as we say, there's a spectrum of loss that occurred, and children that were more affected by loss. I'm wondering what we're doing for the kids that really didn't get their 4th and 5th grade year and are now in 6th and 7th grade without their, read to learn foundation, and they're thrown into middle school level. I could see that being, discouraging, right? And I guess I'm wondering if in our middle school, we need some supports that mirror more our elementary schools to help those kids not feel lost with the loss of learning that affected some of them maybe more than others. And I guess that's a concern of mine. I don't know if you can speak to that.
Well, like you, Marianne, I'm a parent here too. So my oldest is a senior this year, and I have a son who's a freshman, and my youngest is a 6th grader. So like many of our families, I lived through this pandemic here too, and all of our children were affected in a variety of ways, and they all need a lot from us right now. And I feel very grateful to work with the teachers and leaders that I do, because I think that we do have some good ideas to propose at different levels about how we can support kids in these different areas.
Well, I guess I just wonder, has there been any modification? I remember when my 3 kids went through middle school, right? And, the degree to which they were rock star readers makes middle school easier or harder for kids. And, so I guess I'm just wondering if there's been any analysis similar to the one that's been done for elementary school, and maybe this isn't your area, but, maybe it's somebody else, but I'm just curious if we're looking at those kids too, to say, you know, they didn't close out their elementary school, and now those kind of supports are very different. I know sixth grade is a little bit still, there's reading support in sixth grade, isn't there? Isn't that the like last elementary year or something? But certainly, I guess, is there any kind, you know, we don't do Fontes and Canal in sixth grade and seventh grade, and those kids are given the same, you know, social studies and science text. And if those are overly challenging for them, that makes school just a nightmare, right? And a constant reinforcement of them, you know, not being up to standards, right? And maybe thinking about themselves from a different academic point of view than we would want, right? We want them to realize that, you know, if we used to have 70% of kids and now we have 40, that means through no fault of their own, those 30 got lost. And we're working on this, you know, trying to find them, right? But we have to find them in other places too. You know, and I think the middle school is a really, I mean, everybody's had middle school and knows, you know, it's tough years in their lives, right? So I guess my specific question is, are we analyzing or making specific interventions for middle schoolers who didn't get a good closeout on their elementary reading education?
Yes. So fortunately, I do have the K-12 view on that.
Yeah.
And if Dr. Moyer and Dr. Rodriguez would like, we can talk more specifically about middle school and the pieces of the program and interventions and our assessments of that level.
You know, or maybe another time if that makes more sense, you know. Yeah. Everybody's like, yeah, another time period, not now. But anyway, I would be very interested in that at another time. And also the cohort information.
Yes.
Anyone have any further questions? Or are we done?
Martin, could I get one comment?
Yeah,
I'll try to make it quick, kind of
Go ahead.
piggybacking on things first.
Take your time.
One of the things that I wanted to just remind everybody of is that we saw such a beautiful example from Dr. Murray before, but reading is so important. We all know that. But the balance is so important that you teach them community. Right now in the middle school, we're hearing about kids that have gotten out of the structure of school and they have forgotten how to behave. And if you don't know how to behave, you're not going to learn to read. And so I just want to make sure we don't get tunnel vision on improving reading scores. Absolutely, we want to improve reading scores, but it has to be holistic. That's my comment.
Good. Any further questions? Good. Thank you, Dan. Next on the agenda, strategic communication plan. Melissa, you're up.
I don't know.
Playing me how I advance slides. Good evening. I am pleased tonight to present the framework for district strategic communication plan. The district's communication office supports the district's mission by facilitating communication with internal and external audiences, and by building and maintaining relationships that promote a high level of communication, trust, support, and engagement. Communication is key to the district's accountability by demonstrating to stakeholders that the district is fulfilling its mission and meeting the goals set forth by the Board of Education. In short, to paraphrase Dr. Murray, good communication is like good education. It's about community, connection, and relationships. I came to Arlington as an employee in 2004. As a matter of fact, yesterday was my 17th anniversary with the district. Our communication department is made up of myself, and my new title is Chief Communication and Community Engagement Officer,
I have a sign on my door. It says I have the longest title in the district. So in short, I like to be known as the CCCEO of the district. Carol O'Leary is a part-time communication specialist from BOCES who started with us at the end of September. In addition to serving as the communication officer, I'm also the district arts and education coordinator and the data protection officer. Successful district communication supports all of the board's priority areas. However, the strategic communication plan is built around the board's communication, community engagement, and partnerships priority. A well-thought-out strategic communication plan will help ensure that a school district carries out its mission and meets its goals with the support of its staff and community. As recommended by the National Association for School Public Relations, the plan was developed using a 4-step PR planning model. RACE stands for Research, Action, Communication, and Evaluation. Examples of research include surveys, focus groups, national data, website and social media analytics, and best practices rubrics and benchmarks. These are also the same methods used for evaluating the plan. Sorry, I'm like shaking, I'm so cold. Process of drafting the full details of this 3-year strategic plan. Tonight, I will be presenting some background, as well as the goals and strategies outlined in the plan. My next step will be to work with Dr. Moyer, the cabinet, administrators, and internal and external stakeholders to fully develop the action items and timelines for implementation. While this is a 3-year plan, the communications department always strives to continually improve. This plan is a living document and will evolve as needed. A communication plan in its entirety identifies the members of our internal audiences, such as our employees and our Board of Education, and members of our external audience, such as parents, taxpayers, and community leaders. It also identifies desired behaviors and attitudes, such as employees taking pride and ownership in the district, and district families feeling involved and engaged in their schools. It identifies communication channels such as websites, emails, printed newsletters, and social media, and it outlines the resources we will use to evaluate its effectiveness. Tonight, I will focus on the goals and strategies laid out in the plan. The first goal, and these are in no particular order, is to use a variety of media to maximize awareness and support of the district's missions, goals, and programs. I've identified 10 strategies that we will implement in order to meet this goal. As stated earlier, these strategies will be broken down further into action steps that will be undertaken over the next 3 years. Over the past 3 months, we've already taken a number of action steps that I will highlight at the end of my presentation this evening. This slide highlights the first 5 strategies associated with this goal. These are the next 5 strategies associated with this goal. The 10th strategy is to put together a community-based task force to help us continually improve and evaluate our communication efforts. The next goal is to establish effective employee communication plan to improve internal communication and employee engagement. Our staff are our most important ambassadors. Well-informed staff have a positive influence on district communications. Our secretaries are often the first people that parents and the community members come in contact with. They play a vital and invaluable role as customer relations, and we want to make sure that they have the training, the information, and the support that they need. The The third goal is to establish a clear brand identity for the district and build on the image and reputation. A district's brand is more than a logo, colors, or a mascot. It goes beyond taglines or mottos. When you think about a district brand, we want to think about our entire community experience. Everything from our website to social media, to the way we answer the phone, and to the way our students interact with our staff. A brand is a set of expectations, memories, stories, and relationships. Building a positive brand is critical for districts wanting to attract and retain quality faculty and staff. It has been nearly 10 years since we rebranded during our strategic planning effort in 2012. We want to ensure that our brand image projects the image and tells the stories that we want to tell. According to Eric Scheninger, branding is about building community and trust. The brand is made up of three fundamental elements: an image, a promise, and a result. While there are currently only 2 strategies listed for this goal, branding will touch every aspect of our communication, and there will be a number of action steps associated with each of these strategies. Our fourth goal is to develop and maintain positive collaborative relationships with all school community members to strengthen support for the district. For our first strategy, which is commencing a formal community engagement effort, we are currently in the process of soliciting proposals for potential community engagement partners to begin conducting focus groups this spring to identify community priorities. The second strategy is providing a welcoming and responsive environment for all members of the school community. Dr. McDonald and I are co-chairing the Wellness and Belonging Subcommittee on Family Engagement and Communication. Our committee will be surveying district families to measure their feelings of belonging within our school district in ways that we can enhance two-way communication. And finally, as district leaders are developing community partnerships, we want to make sure that we are celebrating and sharing these relationships. Since March 2020, the district has been in constant crisis communication mode, and we have not had the opportunity to tell our success and good news stories on a regular basis. Social media is a platform for telling our stories. We know that 84% of people are engaged on social media. We have started with Facebook because research indicates that Facebook is still where we reach more of our parents. So we have been off of social media for the past year, and starting on October 25th, we relaunched our Facebook page. We currently have 5,100 followers, and within the past 30 days, we reached over 8,700 people. The posts that we have pictured here are staff veterans and celebrating how one family made lemonade out of lemons when their daughter was quarantined and couldn't attend her middle school concert. These are 2 of our most highly engaging posts. Next week, I'm sure we'll see a tremendous engagement as we highlight one of Dr. Murray's custodians what song was he singing? He was singing Jingle Bells. We have a video of him singing Jingle Bells with the kids as they got off the bus on Friday morning. As a result of our bus driver shortage, we have had issues with buses running late in the morning. We have now imported our bus routes into School Messenger, and we have trained our transportation staff how to use this system so that they can let families know if their buses are running more than 15 minutes late in the morning. And last month, we launched a campaign to encourage our staff and families to opt in to receive text messages as another way to get information from the district. Since launching our campaign, we have gone from having 198 parents signed up to receive texting, and as of today, we have 4,897 parents who have now signed up to receive texting, in addition to 609 employees. And the last strategy that I want to talk about that we've taken some steps towards is using video as a communication tool. Some of our current video projects include creating a State of the Schools video, and we will be hosting a virtual tribute to Dr. King the week of January 17th. We also look forward to creating videos that explain to how to use Parent Portal to some of our new families who are coming into the district. Back to school videos and videos that speak to community initiatives. And I am excited to bring back our popular Mission Arlington video series, where we interview a student each week who exemplifies the district mission. And this fall, we partnered with CGI Video Productions to create an identity video that will be posted on the Dutchess County and our district website for prospective families. And while we are still finalizing the video, I am happy to give the board a sneak peek this evening.
The Arlington Central School District mission is to empower all students to be self-directed, lifelong learners who willingly contribute to their community and lead passionate, purposeful lives.
At Arlington, we foster a sense of belonging by honoring the dignity of each and every person. The overall well-being of each individual is our top priority.
The district is located 75 miles north of New York City. Our 8 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, and 1 high school serve approximately 8,000 students. We offer a wide array of programs, electives, and extracurricular opportunities. We provide students with rigorous, relevant, and personalized learning opportunities that prepare them for success in college, career, and life. Arlington personalizes learning for all students, prioritizing who is learning over what is being taught. We are student-focused and future-driven. Our district embraces technology as a tool to spark curiosity, encourage innovation, and promote relevant, engaging, and meaningful learning for students. Through the combined efforts of the entire Arlington community, students, parents, teachers, administrators, staff, and community members, our learning organization works to prepare students to thrive in a rapidly changing global world by fostering the 6 C's of life readiness: creativity, critical thinking, communication, collaboration, character, and citizenship. We continually adapt and transform to prepare all children for healthy lives, lifelong learning, productive civic engagement, self-sufficiency, and career fulfillment in their future worlds.
I love Arlington. We love Arlington.
I love Arlington. Yo amo a Arlington.
I love Arlington.
Arlington.
I love Arlington.
And I behave Arlington. Arlington.
I love Arlington.
We love Arlington.
We are Arlington Central School District.
In conclusion, I would like to thank Dr. Moyer and the board for the opportunity to be able to work strategically in a leadership position and to expand our communication efforts with the addition of our BOCES communication specialist. Thank you.
Melissa, where did you say we were using that video?
We'll be using that on, it's going to be, we partnered with CGI as a number of organizations throughout the county. So it will be posted on the Dutchess County government website as well as on our district website.
Melissa, and we'll also, like if I speak at Rotary or if there are other things like that, you know, we'll incorporate that if we have this speeding engagement effort or other different opportunities, we'll be sharing where we can, social media, et cetera.
Melissa, I had a great opportunity, which you might remember, in that Dr. Moyer set up an orientation for me as a new board member. And I got to meet with, and
everybody in the cabinet and so many people around the district. And my respect for Arlington, when I saw what you guys are doing, increased so much. I don't know, it's probably down on the list, but I don't know if you could put together an orientation so that people could meet Paul Finch and Kevin Sheldon and all of the Melissa. Because people don't know who's here. Even just if you're registering your kid, if you saw who was going to do the registration before you got here, and they explained what they do and why the rules are, I just think that could be so helpful to people, because people don't realize the quality at central office.
I appreciate that. I think that's a great idea for another video series.
So my concern is that it seems to be you and this person from BOCES. And this is a whole heck of a lot of stuff to do. So I'm just thinking in terms of sort of prioritizing. Do you have in your head what, I mean, you mentioned task forces and branding. I mean, this is super duper time consuming. Because as you know, my pet peeve is our website. You know, so that's something very narrow compared to all of this big picture stuff. So how are you going to divide your time between like specific communication needs and then these bigger needs of talking to the community?
Well, I think that's part of why it's a 3-year plan. Because I think that recognizes, I think a 3-year plan gives us a roadmap so we know where we want to go, but also recognizes that we can't do all of this at once. So that's sort of the next step, is to really sit and hear from you and hear from the cabinet and Dr. Moyer and folks that are here in this room in terms of what are the priorities within this framework so that we can identify some of which we're going to do first. We certainly already identified social media and the website as well. I will tell you that website work that you tend to want to do over the summer because you're not as focused on sort of that day-to-day communication need, is to really look at a website. We're going to want to look at the design, the navigation, as well as the content that's on there. So that once we kind of look at that, we can see, do we need to have a different navigation system to help people find our things on our website more easily? You know, do we need a complete redesign with a different vendor, or should we be looking at perhaps freshening up our website with a different template and making sure that the information that we need is on the website? So that's a huge project. And certainly, the other thing I would speak to is that it can't just be Carol and I. This is a community effort. Communication doesn't come out of one office. Communication comes out of every single facet of the organization. And so some of this is looking at some training, but some of it is also going to have to be things that we're working on as part of the team. Because you're absolutely right. Not one person or 2 people can do everything that's outlined in this plan.
And if I could follow up with that, volunteer someone who doesn't know you guys must be listening. Mr. Jerry Sheedy, who's in the high school communications class, that might be an opportunity for students not only to contribute to your efforts, but also do some coursework that they can do a lot of videos there and a lot of communication.
It's definitely something that I'm looking forward to talking to Dr. Rodriguez a little bit more about, as we're looking at some of these pathways for our students. And it's not just Mr. Sheedy's class, but we've got digital marketing classes at the high school. We've started with Facebook because we know that's where our parents are. We just relaunched our Twitter. We know that's where our staff are. And I should say that these social media platforms, they reach multiple audiences. But we know that for the most part, Facebook is where our parents are. Twitter is where our staff is. And Instagram is where our students are. So as we sort of wait until next fall, most likely to launch our Instagram page, my hope is that we're going to be doing that with a group of student interns or student helpers that can be our ears and ears, not our noses, but our eyes and ears out there to make sure that we're capturing those things that are of interest to our community.
The BOCES contact, your colleague from BOCES who's working with you, is she the one responsible for revamping the Beacon City School District website?
No.
Because
not to my knowledge.
I know Beacon used BOCES, and their website looks infinitely better because of that BOCES collaboration.
So it's actually Desiree is one of her colleagues, actually now that you mention it, who's done that. So I'll take a look at the Beacon's website. We'll kind of take a look at what they're doing. And I've got a number of websites that I've sort of looked at that Dr. Moyer has also shared that we want to model and perhaps, transform as we work to transform our website. But the nice thing about working with BOCES as opposed to just hiring another person in the communication is that we can utilize their expertise. So what I like about Carol, who's working with us now, is her expertise is in graphic design, it is in video editing. Those are skill sets that I do not have. And so we complement each other very well. But if there's a skill set she doesn't have, we can utilize some of the other BOCES staff as well as part of our work with them.
Can you explain a little bit how that collaboration works? Because I remember last year Larry was trying to explain to me. Are they consulting? Are we paying them as consultants? Or how does that work, using the BOCES resources?
So we utilize a poster with the BOCES, the cooperative service agreement. So she is with us 3 days a week. And the beauty is that by going through BOCES is that she's a full-time employee. She works 2 days at either other districts or for the BOCES communication. And so she is with me 3 days a week and works with us. But it means we also earn some state aid back on that contract and are consulting with them, which helps us financially moving forward as well.
Excuse the interruption, it's that time again. May I have a motion to extend the meeting to 10 o'clock?
So moved.
Second? Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Please, motion passes.
You talked about a lot of stuff. What's the top 3 priorities for this?
I think that the top priority is around sort of that first goal of really utilizing different various avenues for communication. So for me, it was definitely improving our use of Google Messenger and how we utilize that as a platform, and social media and our website. I would say under that goal area, those are my top first 3 priorities. In terms of another priority is working with Dr. Moyer to begin this community engagement process. I think that's going to be vital as we move forward as a district to identify what some of our community's priorities are. And then as part of that would be some of that rebranding. And part of the branding, I think this is going hand in hand, is really use social media to tell our stories. And really, branding in its most simple form is just about storytelling.
I will have a question for you. How you're going to be involving groups to discuss possible ways that you'll pursue. How would you see proceeding to deal with call them hardcore cynics as far as becoming part of the district, owning the district, be they employees or community members?
I think one person at a time. As we continue to improve our communication, as we continue to engage people, nobody's going to ever agree probably with anything that we do 100%. We know that. But I think as long as we're authentic and we strive to build those relationships, that we'll begin to build that trust.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're on to new business. Our new business section of the agenda lists several items for individual resolution approval. Documentation concerning these items has been provided to our board members to assure an extensive and thorough review. And the first item is the first reading. And we don't need to have a motion on that, which is the acceptable use policies for students and staff, Title IX, sexual harassment policy for students, and the same for employees. Moving on to item C, supplemental memorandum of agreement with CSEA. I have a motion.
Second.
Second. Motion second. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried. Item D, supplemental memorandum of agreement, ESA. Have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
And seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried. Letter E, successful practices network proposal. And have a motion. So. And seconded. Any discussion? And I understand that most of this is going to be paid through federal grants, correct?
Well, yeah, I just thought that,
No tax implications.
well, yeah, I've got a couple comments here related to this item. So I appreciate the opportunity to interject here. As many people are aware, we've been experiencing a significant increase in student behavior incidents at LaGrange Middle School, many involving physical violence. It is imperative that our schools are safe places where the focus is on learning and all students can thrive. This proposal is intended to provide the support and resources necessary to understand the root causes of the issues and develop a comprehensive action plan that will address this concerning situation. I believe that the Successful Practices Network is the best option to support this work and result in both immediate and sustainable improvements. SPN is a not-for-profit that works with schools and districts globally. It has specific expertise with the issues LMS is currently experiencing. The organization specializes in dropout prevention, trauma skills, and literacy. If approved, Dr. Robert Peters, Vice President of SPN, will lead the partnership with the school community. The first phase of the work would begin in January and involve a needs analysis that includes stakeholder input from students, teachers, and families. The goal is to ensure that all voices are heard and have a role in developing and implementing proactive strategies that will result in improved school climate and increased learning. We recognize that people are frustrated, need support, and want to see change. This approach is intended to be inclusive and organic, with the ultimate plan tailored specifically to the needs of LMS. I believe that this personalized support will lead to better outcomes than any specific program, though other sources of support will likely be identified through the input and planning process. The work for the remainder of this year will be paid for through COVID relief funds. The cost of the work for year 2 will be offset by a COSER agreement with Questar 3 BOCES. The cost may be further reduced through a combination of COVID and title funds. So I think that this is a significant issue, and taking time to provide some rationale for why we felt that it was important to move in this direction and ask for your approval was important. Yeah.
I think as part of the planning process that is starting in January, will you come up with a table of measures of success?
Yeah, that'll have to be part of it. They'll want to identify specifically which approaches they want to take and how they're going to try to assess the effectiveness of things. So there will definitely be some outcomes and priorities identified.
So quantitative as well as qualitative?
Yeah, I definitely believe they'll be quantitative. We'll be looking at behavior infractions, the type of behavior infractions, attendance, survey data from student perceptions and staff perceptions. So I think actually it's likely to be more quantitative than qualitative. I'm thinking, but they have a lot of expertise, and so we want to work with somebody that we know has this level of expertise, but we also want to tailor it to make sure that there's shared ownership with everybody in that school community in terms of not only trying to understand as best we can what's really going on, but also make sure that there's a shared commitment to making the improvements that we know need to happen.
Is this in a broad category of safety and health or some other category?
Well, to me, it's kind of related. I mean, we have a combination of behaviors that are impacting the climate of the building and help and leading toward people not feeling safe. That, of course, leads to learning, adversely impacts learning. So I think that they're intertwined. I also think to the extent that there are root cause issues, I think that we need to find out what those are, so that we're not just blindly saying this program's the answer or that program's the answer, because I think it's very, very complex situation. So when you say is it primarily safety, foundationally we have to make sure that we have safe environment. But the issues are also very interrelated, because there could be reasons why kids aren't coming to school, and we need to understand what that is. There may be different things that our teachers need to think about that they might be able to do better if there's more support for them in learning how to deal with some of the things that they're facing. So there could be a professional learning piece involved. There could be just some consistency involved in determining like a school-wide behavior plan that's consistently, expectations are clear, everybody. So I think, but the ultimate two big things to me are, one, people need to be safe at school, and two, the fact that these issues are so prevalent is having a significant adverse impact on the learning. And so we've got to, I think, address it. I think that what they'll find after they go in there and start working with people is that these issues are interrelated to some extent, and they're not just like this or that.
Safety and social emotional learning.
Well,
is what you're saying is.
Well, I think that there are some things that may need to be explicitly taught to students as part of, how do you interact with others in certain situations and those types of things. So I think there's an SEL piece there, the safety, the SEL piece, I would agree with, but I think that there will be positive impacts on the learning as well when we get into this, because I think you're going to find that it's not going to be just about hiring another dean, or we're not going to be able to suspend our way out of this. Everybody in the building has to be a part of a positive solution, and the people that have the best relationships with the most close relationships with the students are the teachers. So part of what we want to make sure that we do is that we're providing the appropriate support for the teachers in every way possible. We could change bell schedules, for example. I'm just giving you an example of a structural fix. We could do something like that might have an impact, but ultimately some of those issues, fix like surface types of things and don't get totally at the real issues of what's going on. And we want to do both. We want to get the short-term impact that we have to have so that, starting after the holidays, we can start making immediate improvements. But we want to make sure that we're creating a sustainable situation that's truly getting at whatever types of approach or improvement strategies are needed, that it's something that also is a lasting type of a thing and not a Band-Aid.
I just want to understand something. I really liked what you said. You said it was the effort was going to be inclusive and organic, and I understand inclusive, but can you give me an example of organic? I think I'm being dense. But
well, what I mean by organic is the fact that there are programs out there that exist. One of them is something called PBIS, that stands for Positive Behavior Intervention System. We could go in there and say to the faculty, okay, starting in January, like we're a PBIS school and that's what we're doing. And then something is being done to them. And it's not being done with students having a chance to offer input, with parents being a part of the process, with us truly understanding how the various different segments of that community feel. And what we have to do is when we identify one or two specific areas that we target, there has to be total buy-in that people are willing to support it for it to work. And so when I say organic, I want to make sure that the people involved are generating with support the solution to the problem, and it's not just being arbitrarily imposed. There's a lot of different things that we could possibly do, and it's really important that the people that are doing the work feel strongly that this is where we want to go with it. That will be, I believe, a way to lead to much better outcomes than if we just try to fix some type of program and say, oh, we're doing this, that's going to fix everything. I don't think that's.
You know, I really like the direction of, getting the input of staff, parents, and really, and creating something, appropriate response for that building. One question I have is just, if you could specifically discuss, we've had a couple of parents, and certainly we have our own knowledge of some of the bullying incidents at LMS. Would you see this group as being equipped to help that be part of what they're going to work on as they begin a plan?
Yeah, without a doubt. This group, the Successful Practices Network, one of the affiliates of the Successful Practices Network is the National Dropout Prevention Center. And so their whole focus is focusing on some of the types of issues that are currently in play at LMS, unfortunately. And they have expertise in kids who have what we call ACEs, which means they have certain strikes against them, so to speak. It may be from a poverty situation, it may be from, some type of other, there's I think 10 of them that they've identified, and kids that have more of those will be much more at risk to graduate from high school. And so what we're trying to do is take a look at the research that's out there on trauma-informed approaches, take a look at some of the things that they know have worked, and there's a variety of them that we could adopt. But again, that goes back to my key of the building being able to decide that this is the approach we want to take. So, their specific expertise or niche has to do with going into some of these situations where you may have higher population of students that where school is more of a challenge for them to navigate for whatever reason, and helping develop plans that support those students and those schools and those employees to ensure that we're. It's actually what I like about it is that it's consistent with some of the other things that we've been talking about personalizing learning, about career pathways, about building relationships, etc. So, but there are different elements of that look a little bit different than what you might have seen in a traditional classroom 10 years ago or 12 years ago. And so we want to make sure that people truly understand what the best approach is to be able to have a positive impact on the situation.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay.
Microphone, Ed, help me out.
Well, what we learned here, do you think is transportable to the rest of the district?
Yes, I do. I think it is as it relates to, and I appreciate the question actually, because I wish I had included this in some of my comments. I think that as we learn from this, we will definitely be able to generalize this to other situations, because we have situations like this in all of our schools. We're just seeing that there's an increased prevalence at LMS right now. But the other thing is a lot of it is just good instruction, or a lot of it is just good practice. And so if we learn things from should build on this and capitalize on this everywhere.
Thank you.
Because I think, Dave, you know, all of us here on the board, we're all hearing information, especially from LMS, unfortunately, that's really upsetting. And so I think that it's helpful to know that, you know, we're doing something to try to address it. And just to follow up with what Marianne said about the bullying, I think that's the most upsetting thing, because I think we all agree we want our kids to feel safe in school, and that's something that we need to get a handle on.
Well, it's been upsetting for all of us, there's no question. I mean, we share that, and it's not that there haven't been things that we're trying to do with personnel or structures or practices. And I mean, they're literally trying to make adjustments every day as these things are occurring. So it's a very complex situation. I want to be sensitive, but I also want to acknowledge that this is not within the realm of normalcy that I've experienced in my career, and it's significant, and we should not tolerate this that is happening in our community or our schools, and we have to, I believe that we have to allocate the resources immediately to start turning this around.
And hopefully, this is just what you just said, hopefully they'll get far enough in whatever their initial review of the situation is with all the people on the ground to kind of get back to us within the season of the budget if they need further support for next year.
Yeah,
You know, because I think we're all really committed to turning this situation around.
Yeah, I think that one of the things I like about them is that they will provide some, it's not some type of camp situation that we're getting into here. So I think that as the study unfolds and the recommendations come out there, if there are some costs associated with some things that we need to take into account, we should definitely have that information in a timely manner.
Anything further? Okay, motion's been made, seconded for successful practices network proposal. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention. Motion carried. Item 9, future discussion items. Anyone?
I would like us to figure out how we're going to do our calendar to finish our retreat with a January date. So I don't know how you make that happen, but
Well, I
make
sent
that
something
happen, that
out.
would be great.
You're here.
I sent something out to all of you, and if that's acceptable, we can start figuring out what date is good for the group. Yeah, is everyone okay with it being virtual to make life a little easier for everyone?
I actually would like us to be in person. That'd be my personal opinion. I mean, I can recognize there might be different opinions. I'd like us to meet again if it has to be on a Saturday morning. I'll make myself available. But, you know, and obviously if the situation with COVID changes and we don't feel like that's the appropriate thing, we can change. But I would like us to be together. Okay. In fact, I was going to say in my reflections, but I'll say it now to keep that shorter. I can't tell you how wonderful it is to have this set up back. How we are actually looking and making eye contact with each other, and we're connecting to each other's comments, and it makes it, I think it really improved the meeting greatly.
Everybody fine with that? Okay. I will contact you and see if we can come up with it.
Would you like Margie to send out like a calendar poll?
Yeah.
Do it that way? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. That. Any other future discussion items? Okay, moving on. Business consent agenda. Our consent agenda section of the agenda lists several items for approval by single motion. Documentation concerning these items has been provided to our board members in advance to ensure an extensive and thorough review. May I have a motion? Second. I have a motion and it's been seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. Yes, I have a motion to extend to 10:15. I'm trying to be optimistic. 10:15. You want longer, I'll give it.
Well, we have public comment. We have another
Oh, all
section of
right,
public
let's
comment.
make it 10:30.
I think we need 10:30.
10:30. Do I have a motion? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? To item 11, public comments. This is the second of two opportunities for people to address the board. Please state your name and address and keep your remarks to 3 minutes or less. Although we do not engage in dialogue, we are listening. Disparaging remarks concerning specific individuals or positions are prohibited. If you leave contact information with Mrs. Flynn, our district clerk, superintendent, or one of his staff will contact you as soon as possible. And I would add this would be also to discuss students by name.
Patricia Bauerlein? Hello, my name is Patty Bauerlein.
Hold on. It's not on.
Hi, I'm Patty Caroline. I'm the teacher at Untitled Middle School. I teach sixth grade science. I just want to start by saying that there's some of the things that have happened in personal public comment that LaGrange Middle School is struggling, but we have a lot of really wonderful, wonderful children. And I will tell you that when my students are in science groups, they are happy, they are multicultural, they get along, they laugh, and they are enjoying school. And they are stepping up to the plate, even though their reading level might not be where it should be. They really are thirsty to learn. So that is something that you need to know. With it being some difficult times, I have two daughters who graduated from Arlington, 23 and 26, very successful. I could go on for an hour and tell you how great Arlington is and what Arlington has done for my children. They don't have that time. But with it being difficult, I find myself struggling to sleep at night. I've been teaching for a very long time, 10 years here at this building, and I've been at Granger Middle School for 20 years. I did something that I don't normally do. I took time and I wrote to the board members, and I sent each one of our board members a letter this weekend. I'm not going to speak to my letter. I will speak to a very fair comment from a board member back to me. And the comment was, have you invited the superintendent to your building? And I had to think on that because we had not. So we have a teachers meeting on Monday, and I talked about the letter that I wrote, and many teachers talked about what they have sent you. So, you know, a lot of teachers have sent things, right? So I commented on this fair question, and we talked about it, and we said, you know what? We should be inviting our superintendent to talk with us. So Dr. Moyer, on behalf of the teachers at LaGrange Middle School, we used to have something called Cookies and Conversation, where our superintendent would come to our building, board members were welcome to come, we would have 2 or 3 come. Our administrators were there, and it's just an open conversation, a heartfelt conversation. And although you just motioned to have this company come in, one of the things we talked about is that we weren't part of that conversation. We don't know anything about this company. We don't know the goal. We know that you're coming from a very good place. We have a new principal who's working very hard. Outside of putting a Murphy bed in her
30
office
seconds.
for her to sleep there at night, the challenges are difficult. So we don't know when. We know that time is, we know that post-COVID, everybody's time is valuable. But on behalf of our teachers in our building, we really feel that sometimes the bad has to come out before the good can happen. And I think it's December, and I don't think, and I know that our principal has heard us. And what some messages
Just
back
3
to
minutes.
you. But just consider and please come and meet with us because we really need that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Can we go to remote? Can we take a remote person? Are we gonna alternate like we did last time?
I'm sorry.
Would you like to? It's up to you.
Sure, after Mr. Rhoda, we'll take the next one.
Do you like Mr. Rhoda first? Sure. You just let me know.
I'm Jim Rhoda, Pleasant Valley. First, I want to say that there's a lot on the agenda to go on for over 3 hours. While the 3 presentations are important, maybe if you spread it out a little bit more over different meetings instead of having 3 hours, it's probably beneficial to everybody. In the video that during one of the presentations, there was a comment that the overall well-being of students is our top priority. So if that's really true, and that's really what everybody believes, then my comment is about the policy 6460, which I did email everybody, I did email the superintendent, I did get some comments back. There's been some discussion on when the committee is going to meet, but I wanted to put it out there for the whole public that didn't have the benefit of seeing the communication and why this policy needs to be changed sooner rather than later. The district policy 6460 states it's the policy of the district, school psychologists, social workers, guidance counselors, and other professional staff not engaged in private counseling services or other such activities for compensation with students who are educated in the district. That's different than what the policy states for teachers who are allowed to do tutoring services, just not for students that they directly teach. So the policy that limits students to have mental health counseling is discriminatory not only to the students, but to the school psychologists, social workers, guidance counselors, and all. So I laid out several points on why that policy needs to be changed. Students are in need of counseling services now. The pandemic has caused a disruption in the way that mental health services are offered. Students do not have the luxury of time right now to wait, spending looking for providers that have the ability to schedule to take on new patients. Students that work with a counselor outside of school that are not in, in the school working together would not be a conflict of interest or an improper discharge of the counselor's duties, since they don't work together, they're in different schools. I mentioned the only restriction placed on teachers engaging in tutorial services outside of school is that it cannot be done for students that are currently educated within that teacher's class. School psychologists are limited to any student in the district, as the policy currently states. There's currently a supreme shortage of mental health resources, a long wait list. It's an equity issue for the students, and limiting who students receive mental health counseling services from outside school is contrary to the district's mission to empower all students to be self-directed lifelong learners who willingly contribute to the community and lead passionate and purposeful lives. There's also the Board of Education priority areas and goals for the 21-22 school year that was passed on August 24th. Belonging and wellness, which is
Time is up, sir. Thank you.
I do want to say, to your point, that I thought you made valid comments on the chair of the policy committee, and we are actually expediting a discussion. We're having a meeting on Friday because you raised very valid points. So
this Friday, or
yes,
okay,
this
I
Friday.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll go to
Wyona Rutledge.
the first name.
Wyona Rutledge. She's still logged in. We'll see if she's with us, so to speak. Here we go. Ms. Rutledge, are you there? Can you unmute yourself?
Yes, I'm
There you
here.
go. We can hear you.
Hi, Wyona Rutledge. I'm in Hopewell, and I have a daughter at the high school. I guess I'm just kind of piggybacking off of the bullying and then also the gentleman before me in regards to mental health services. I'm aware of the lockdown drills, but with the rise in the school shootings after the pandemic, I'm just wondering, is the district thinking of or have plans regarding school shootings, but prevention? Is there an anonymous hotline for students or parents to report a threat? Are there mental health services for students who have mental health issues, suicidal thoughts, or being bullied? Are there any school safety organizations such as Safe and Sound Schools doing presentations to the school or for the district? With parents and families in the district feeling that bullying is going unchecked, I hope school shooting prevention is something the district is thinking about or actively planning. My fear is bullying of any kind can also contribute to mental health issues leading to violence in the schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll go to Mrs. Flynn.
Good evening, Liz Zidge, 53 Cunningham Drive, Grangeville. I wanted to ask about the use of space policy here in Arlington Central School District. In the past, rec programs have made use of our gyms, especially the elementary gyms in the district. This year, that hasn't been allowed. Section 1 sports are mostly up and running, including basketball. Why are we not allowing our rec programs to happen in our gyms? The vast majority of the students who participate in these rec programs are actually students of our own district. My daughter, along with 40 other girls, tried out for a basketball team at UVMS. She and 14 others made the team. What about the other 25? What do they have? Well, they don't have rec anymore because for some reason we're not allowing people to use our gyms. Millbrook lets students use the gyms for rec programs. Wappingers seems to figure out a way to do it. Why can't we? We talk about mental health, but our actions definitely speak louder than words here in this district once again. Recent studies show an alarming statistic. Teen suicide attempts of girls are up 51%. That's startling. Such a small thing, allowing clubs and the rec programs to happen could actually mean so much to some of these kids, for sure. I also want to reflect on the presentations by Dr. Murray and also Ms. Brown. I can't help to think horrendous test scores, chronic absenteeism, and then I think about our policies that we have implemented. They've only been exacerbating these issues. I think it's our job as parents and it's your job as board members to question some of these policies. Yes, there's New York State policies, doesn't mean they're right. I know we're confined by the law, we have to work within the law, but it's our job to ask questions. If something doesn't seem right, we just shouldn't sit here month after month after month and after month and subject our students to some of these absurd policies. We're on day 640 something of this pandemic. Kids have been in school since October of 2020. We have the data. We know how many kids have been quarantining every day. We know how many kids who are close contacts have been quarantined have come down with COVID subsequently. And that number is probably very, very low. I've asked for it on 2 occasions. No one has provided me with those numbers. But the policies that we're implementing, I think, are more detrimental to the students. And I think it's going to be years before we actually figure out the mess that we have in part helped created by implementing and keeping a lot of these policies going strong month after month after month after month after month in Arlington. I do appreciate that you guys finally decided that test to stay and test out of quarantine were acceptable. It shouldn't have taken this long. We've had all that data for so many months. You should have been able to turn on a dime. So I appreciate it, but I am slightly disappointed. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it, and Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Can we go to online? Yeah, we'll see. Jennifer B., do you have a a topic not on the agenda that you wish to speak to? Jennifer B, if you have a non-agenda item. Anything?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. Do you want me to just keep going until we have someone remotely? Okay. Kristen, Dion, do you happen to have something on the, not on the agenda that you wish to speak to?
Sorry, tried to figure out how to mute. No, I'm fine. Thank you. I already spoke.
Okay, thanks. Then we just have one left, so I'll just ask. Let me just switch so that not everybody unmutes at the same time. Ava Woods Perot, do you have something that you wish to talk about that is not on the agenda?
Can I speak to the presentation that Mr. Moyer made, the superintendent, about the consulting company for LMS and the vote that the board just took? Would that be acceptable?
The answer is yes. They're all nodding yes. Go ahead.
So I just wanted, I'm a little bit concerned, and if it's okay, I'm going to keep my video off because thank you. I really appreciated the comments from the teacher from LMS who spoke and who said how interaction between children and teachers, between children and administrators, the visits from superintendents in the past had made a very big difference, just conversation. And when you look at how much money the district just decided to spend on a company or on an organization, over $200,000, right, of tax money is going to be spent to fix this problem that LMS has. And I'm very concerned because I went to the website. There's very little information that they give. And I do have to say that there's a lot of language on their website and in the words also of Dr. Moyer that gets coded, like words like behavior. And we know that over time, when we have companies and stuff come in who are looking at children's behavior, it ends up targeting disproportionately Black and brown children. They become the problem. They always become the problem. There are lots of problems at LMS, and I've named just a few. I was talking about the racist bullying tonight that's pervasive. That's in all of the schools in the district. It's not just at LMS. But I do think that there should be some further discussion about the kind of company that you pay so much money to come in and fix these problems. I think that these problems need the kind of addressing that the teacher spoke to. I think that was very wise of her, and I thank her for taking that risk. And I think that these companies ultimately, unless we really know something about it. I mean, how many experts that actually study equitable solutions in school districts did you consult? Like what was the process? I heard very little that convinced me. So, and I'm very concerned. Just adding more discipline or more police officers or what have you, that is not going to address the problems that. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you. And I just want to correct you that there is no effect on the tax rate here to Arlington. There's a federal.
Unfortunately.
Oh, sorry. Do you want me to let her talk? Sorry.
Miss Pat Wheeler?
suggested that open speaking would continue before. Somebody over here shot it down. Do you know how many parents left and they wanted to speak tonight? It's very disheartening. Anyway, my name is Pat Whalen and I'm in Poughkeepsie, New York. I recently found out that there's a book in the high school library called Gender Queer. Have any of you read that book? And if you have, and you don't think there's anything wrong with it, shame on you. Each one of you needs to read the book, and one of you can get up here and read it in front of the public. It is pornography, it's pedophilia, and it doesn't belong in the schools. This is disgusting. A lot of the parents are aware of what is being taught in the school. Students in the school are now being exposed to transgender and LGBT lifestyle. I'm not judging these people, but there's only 4.5% of the population. Can you tell me why the other 95.5% of this school is being indoctrinated with this? I'm not judging these people. And if a consenting adult wants to be a transgender, or they want to be a part of the gay community, that's their business. But it's not your business to indoctrinate this lifestyle to the students in this school. You're supposed to be teaching these kids academics, not lifestyle changes. And on another note, we talk about the mask. Did you know that a family can go out to a restaurant with their kids and have no mask on? They can get up and go to the restaurant. And you know why? Because they're not at the mercy of the government. You receive $15 million from the government. So you know what the inclinations are in receiving the government money? You're at their mercy. And the implications are there's no metric data given to any mandates, there's no medical privacy, and the elimination of parents' rights. Now a dentist is finding out that masks are causing great bacteria in children's teeth, and it's creating a lot of problems. Dr. Moya, I come to you and I've asked you numerous times, like this lady here, why can't we have a town meeting? Do you know how everyone that came up here tonight had a presentation? You had an open dialogue. And I commend you, both of you, people that spoke right now to somebody, and you answered their questions. We do it in Hyde Park. We may not agree with each other, but Dr. Moya, you owe it to the people. No wonder they're frustrated. You sit there and you just stare at us. These are concerns. The critical race theory that you're teaching in the school, the gender identity that you're teaching, you've got to be accountable. We're all going to stand before God someday, whether you believe in God or not. We're all going to stand. And you're going to be held accountable for the things that you're allowing in the school. You have a duty. I spoke with the president, Peter Bodman. He and I had a conversation. He knows where I'm coming from, and I know where he's coming from. And now we have a relationship. We want a relationship with you, but you need to talk to us, not just stare at us. No wonder I'm angry. People are frustrated. Let's have that open dialogue. We're on the same plane here. It's for the kids. The government doesn't own these kids. You don't own these kids. These are God's kids. Sleep on that tonight.
No one else online. No, I don't.
Right, Christine Ireland. And Suzanne Vitale.
Hello, I'm Suzanne Vitale. I am in LaGrangeville, New York. And I wanted to talk about masks this evening because they are very risky and dangerous. Myself, due to mask wearing, got a horrible eye infection and went temporarily blind. And I shouldn't be wearing a mask because it's a risk to my health, but I did it tonight because it's horrible that these kids are stuck wearing these masks every day. It's abusive. You were talking about, some people were talking about behavior issues and the kids having to distance and wear these masks. It's not normal or natural. It's traumatizing to them. And at this website, you could read many articles which will talk about the psychological detrimental effects to children due to their mask wearing and the social distancing. I was shocked to find out that the kids are so behind in school in their reading that even before, you call it post-COVID, they were 30% of them could not read at grade level. And then you identify, or someone identified post-COVID, but we're not post-COVID.
still have kids in masks. Again, there is no metric to say when it will end or what is low enough. If you actually did the math and identified the positivity rate to the total population, you would see that we are almost at 0% positivity in Dutchess County. I don't know what is in the school, but I'm sure it's easy now, still a little math and figure it out. And Mr. McCormick, I commend you for having an eye on wanting to catch the kids up to the 30% metric for the children. It's shocking that in such a well-funded district with so many qualified people that we would have children that are doing so poorly. And thank you very much. This is an emergency situation. Normalcy, you have to create normalcy for these children. This is abuse, what's happening every day. You talk about behavior problems, and it's because children need to interact. They need normalcy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. After you have no more, right? Okay. All right, we're moving on now to committee reports. 12. Start with the policy.
So we had the first reading tonight of the student acceptable use policy and the staff acceptable use policy. We met as a policy committee and made some minor modifications. We clarified the acceptability and method of transmitting confidential student information. We emphasized that the teachers were permitted to use the district computer system for pedagogical purposes, but we're noting that personal reasons computers should be used during non-instructional, non-supervisory periods. I think those were the high points. Thank you, Paul Finch, for summarizing. Then we also discussed the employee Title IX sexual harassment and the student Title IX sexual harassment. And there were some changes in that because there is now a more involved investigative process. So now they are required, the school district is required to divide responsibilities in the investigative process to ensure an extra level of impartiality. So before it could just have been the assistant superintendent doing an investigation and having a result, but now there needs to be two different parties involved. And the district is looking into who will be the coordinator, the investigator, and the decision maker. So that's something that we're still going to figure out logistically. And in response to a community request, we are going to meet on Friday and discuss this policy 6460. And hopefully we'll have some information to present to the rest of the board at the next meeting.
Any questions? Audit finance.
Nothing at this time.
Advocacy.
You've gotten some communication regarding will there be, or how would we approach a mandatory vaccination for school-aged children. Peter punted it to advocacy, so we are looking at this point at a meeting in the beginning of January. Governor Hochul's current policies go through the 15th, I believe, in January, so we're going to bring it to advocacy. We will be back to all of you though after we meet, because we will have to poll the board to see where everybody stands. We can offer recommendations, and then you guys have to let us know how you feel on that subject. So be percolating on that, because we will be asking your opinions.
I think you'll have a recommendation for the next meeting. 14.
So when is?
14.
I hope so. Yeah, because we're going to meet hopefully that first weekend. I'll keep you posted, because I have to let her know to post the meeting.
Very good. Okay, safety.
Kelly and Ed and myself
comprised of the Health and Safety Committee, met just after Thanksgiving. We actually had 2 meetings, one prior to Thanksgiving. And we are asking the board at our next meeting to approve a resolution to approve the Health and Safety Committee as an ad hoc committee not to exceed 90 days without board approval, with the mission of completing the following objectives. And there's only 3, so don't worry. First is develop a routine schedule of reporting incidents to the board, including VADER, which stands for Violent and Dangerous Incident Reports, COVID, quarantine cases, and other pertinent information regarding health and safety. Number 2, we recommend improvements in communication between the administration and the board regarding health and safety issues, example, timing of notification and content. And number 3, which is of interest to people in the community, is to develop a protocol for a town hall meeting to be held periodically to address health and safety in the district. So at our next meeting, we appreciate official approval of the resolution of the Health and Safety Committee with those objectives.
Thank you. Any questions? Number 13, organizational reports. Dutchess County School Boards.
The next Dutchess County School Board meeting is on January 6th, 2022. I believe it's going to be the collective bargaining one. Always it has.
New York State School Boards Association. And National School Boards Association. Arlington Education Foundation. We will be meeting on January 5th. And they're also having 2 meetings, one at 4, I think it's 4 o'clock for the 5K, and then at 5:15 for the regular meeting. Okay. PTA, PTSA.
I attended the last meeting. It's always very interesting and informative. And I used some of the information that I heard there on my comments about test to return. So I'm glad that we were able to close the loop on that for some people. And I think it's the fourth. It's the end of January. I'll update you next time.
Okay. Dutchess County BOCES. Any other organizational reports? Superintendent's closing remarks.
So a couple things. Number one, as Melissa stated in her presentation, we will be beginning a formal community engagement process after the first of the year. Secondly, we do have a school safety officer that's employed by the district that regularly consults with student services and our building principals. We have a district level committee that meets as well. We have a tip line. So I can ask Melissa maybe to reinforce that tip line in our next communication. The current plan for opening up our facilities for indoor usage to outside groups, we were looking at using the sort of benchmark of when the rates go back into moderate, that we would then, start making our facilities available. I do have, as part of my plan for the year, the intention of getting into all the buildings after the first of the year for informal faculty types of drop-in sessions. So that's part of something I had been intending to do. We have discussed some of the concerns that have come out of LaGrange with the ATA at our district leadership team meeting, which is comprised of administrators and teachers from across the district. I have attended a faculty meeting where they were working on strategizing about some of the things that they're dealing with, and I was listening and interacted with some teachers at that point. I addressed the faculty at the early release in October and tried to be specific to some of the concerns that came across to my office, including some of the concerns about facilities, for example, which we walked all of the buildings, including the Grange, with some architects to start the process of beginning to take a look at facilities. You saw on the agenda tonight the proposal that you approved on the consent agenda with a demographer to start to get some more sophisticated information about trends. I explained to them that we were going to take those concerns seriously. And so I have been engaging in this process of what their specific concerns are in that building, and I'm happy to go to that building to meet with the people. I was intending to do that anyway. So I can work with the building principals to find dates for that after the holidays to get into all the buildings and do similar things in each building. So that's some miscellaneous stuff, for lack of a better word.
Dave, I forgot to ask you earlier, did we change, because I had a community member ask me, did we change our bus quarantine policy? Now it's just the kid, the student in the same seat?
Yes, what we did is there's a lot of concern about quarantines, and there's a lot of anger and hostility and frustration with quarantines. And we found out that the other counties in the school were managing their interpretation of what was required on buses in a manner where we thought that we could amend our policy to try to minimize the number of quarantines. So it is, we are, when we contact trace, considering the people in the seat only. So in the seats in front and behind or across the aisle, unless there's been some video footage that shows that kids have been interacting more closely or whatever, we're not just going to routinely automatically quarantine those other students except for the ones that are in the specific seat.
Since this is a policy, shouldn't it have gone through the policy committee for the board to vote on?
I don't believe so. If you wanted to vote on every one of those types of decisions that we have to make, we'd have to be meeting all the time. Our remote plan, we've made adjustments to the remote plan since the beginning of the year in a couple different areas, and I mean, if you want to approve every time we make an adjustment in those types of things, we will have to adjust, but I don't know that is, I don't believe that remote plan is a policy.
It's a procedure, right?
Yeah.
I think it's the parents who weren't told, right? There was no notification sent to the parents, so that's why there was some confusion, and I was asked, and I didn't know.
Well, I mean, we don't, when we contact trace, we only notify the people who are actually close contacts, and we just communicated this to our principals. I think, I don't know, maybe it was on Thursday in the backpack that we sent to our principals this past Thursday. So it's fairly recent. So people that have already been reported to the county health department, once they get on that list, we couldn't go back in time and tell people they could then come back to school, but we could move forward and change our practice of who we report when we consider close contacts. And that's what we did. So I don't, I know that I think in the last Sunday communication, we indicated something in there about where to access the plan or something, right?
Microphone. Can't hear her at home.
Oh, she's the microphone doing.
Sorry, they just can't hear you at home from there.
What Melissa said
Yeah,
is
if you could just,
that, you know, between the time we make a decision and formally update something on the website, that there might be a little bit of a time lag. So we had talked about indicating if there are changes in the plan that we would put that in communication. But the reason, I don't think, see, that was never outlined in the plan in the first place. So there was nothing to change in writing to announce any type of an update. So I'm assuming that that's why there was no, maybe it didn't register that we needed to have a formal communication go out on that. But I'm not sure if principals sent something out in their, you know, Friday newsletters that they sent to the families or something like that. Otherwise, our contact tracing practices, I don't know. There's nothing. I mean, I don't know what you want to know or don't know as far as everything that goes on, but it's pretty fluid. I mean, it changes quickly.
I think, you know, I think parents are very interested in all of the quarantining, you know, policies, rules that we have. So I think that if we do have a change, that people would like to just be kept informed.
That's fine. Yeah, we can be extra sensitive to that issue. I know that one of the things that we have to be careful of is that there always is some room for judgment. So you have to be a little bit careful how you communicate some of that out, because you know, a person could say, hey, you know, the person's in this seat. And normally, if everything else being equal, we wouldn't automatically quarantine that kid. But if there were other things going on in a particular bus that caused the principal to think they needed to use some judgment, they would still have that flexibility to do that. So, but that's what that change was implemented. I think we sent a communication out to the principals on Wednesday of last week and then put it in the backpack as a reminder to reinforce some stuff because they had some questions about it.
Okay, for the motion to extend to 10:45, please. So moved. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstention. Okay. Any more stuff? Dr. Moore?
No more stuff.
Okay. Moving on. Board reflections.
I can reflect just quickly. I would like to, the comment I heard tonight about our rec programs in the gyms, maybe I'm reflecting that would be nice to revisit in the future. And then the other comment is, many of us did the cookies and conversation, Dave. It was really helpful at the different schools. So you just said that you're going to the different schools. I would be interested in going, probably other people. I think it's important to communicate with our colleagues.
Yeah, we can structure that however whatever people are interested in. That's certainly fine. You know, if the board.
They were traditionally budget. They were kind of pre-budget conversations that were allowed to go any direction they wanted to go. They were just, you know, talk sessions.
Yeah.
And but we can decouple it from the budget, you know.
So, you know, I listened to what came out of that health and safety committee. If the committee wants to put that on the next agenda and issue different direction to the administration about what they consider to be appropriate for our facility use policies, that if you're not comfortable with what we currently were thinking was kind of our benchmark for how we were going to make that decision, and you want us to look at it differently, you just need to let us know. But that's what we're kind of operating under right now.
Continuing on board reflections. Anyone else? Okay, that being the case, I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Abstention. We are adjourned. Very good.